All right, good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. Today is Tuesday, July the 14th, and this is our regularly scheduled business meeting. I'm waiting to see if the superintendent is here. It looks like all board members are present and our attorney is online, so we are good to go. Mr. Superintendent, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
I would be honored, Madam Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Normally, we would be coming to you from the Aquilina Health Center, but obviously, through the pandemic, we are meeting via Zoom under the emergency order by the governor. Excuse me, I'm looking at my agenda on the other computer screen, and sorry, it's taking me a second. It just went away just as we were saying the pledge. I apologize. Are there changes and additions to the agenda tonight?
Yes, Madam Chair. There are changes and additions. Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. They are as follows. Add item 19.07, MOU between Leon County Schools and Neighborhood Medical Center. This MOU was added to the agenda to expedite the implementation of rapid testing for COVID-19 for Leon County School employees. Item 2, item 18.07, Swift Creek Middle School, School Initiated Project Covered Outdoor Pavilion, replaced documentation and corrected the dollar amount. 3, item 18.04, Sable Palm Elementary School, Community School Initiated Project, Bicycle Park, move to consideration. This is now item 19.08. This move was requested from School Board Chair Rasmussen in order to highlight this great partnership. 4, add item 19.09, Memorandum of Understanding between the School Board of Leon County, Florida and the South City Foundation, Inc. This MOU was added after final changes were made. Item 5, 19.10, 2019 to 2010 School Board Meeting Dates Calendar Amendment. This item was added per School Board Member Darrell Jones. Item 6, 19.7, MOU between Leon County Schools and Neighborhood Medical Center, replace documentation. I move the acceptance of the changes and additions.
Second. Moved by Ms. Bowen, second by Ms. Striplin. Any objection? Showing no objection. The changes and additions have been approved. Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Takes us back to the top of the agenda. Is there a superintendent spotlight tonight? No, I don't see one on the agenda. What did you? No, sir. You're
Not tonight, Madam Chair. No, ma'am.
Thank you. And no recognitions. Are there reports to be heard? I don't see any on the list other than the Reopen Leon County Schools update. I'm wondering if we want to take that up later to make sure that we get through our business items, our normal business items that are not related to COVID. What's your pleasure? Anybody have any concern about that?
No here.
All right, seeing none, let's move into.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Are you suggesting that we would take care of everything and make that our final item for consideration for our meeting?
Yes, sir. That way, the staff members who have been working long and tireless hours, who are involved in some of these items, can have their evening to themselves.
Does that require a motion or just consensus?
I think just consensus. We can move it. Ms. Williams, are you?
Yeah, it's not an action item. It's just a report to be heard. So you can move that to the end of the meeting, to the end of the agenda.
I have no.
That takes to the consent agenda, starting with And I'm sorry, I'm suggesting with persons to be heard the same, given that almost all of them relate to COVID. Is that true?
Based on my review, Madam Chair, yes.
Okay, thank you. So if with your permission, if there's a motion to move into the consent agenda for items 7 through 17.
I move acceptance of consent.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Bowen. Any objection? Show the consent agenda unanimously approved. That takes us to consent agenda number 18. I would like to make a comment about this. In the on the advice of counsel and in the abundance of caution, I had previously, and at your behest, to try to make the meetings move along more quickly, given the fact that we have relatively few construction items during this season of not only flat growth, but now perhaps diminishing growth and no PICO dollars. Our consent agenda for construction was created to save time. In further consultation with attorneys at the Ethics Commission, I have more clarity on exactly what I can and can't vote on. And so I am free to vote on item 18 tonight because none of the items have anything to do with my day job at the Associated Builders and Contractors. So if there's a motion.
I move consent.
Mr. Jones moves consent on item 18, construction agenda, second by Ms. Wood. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Show it unanimously approved. Thank you. That takes us then to item 19.01. This is a public hearing. This is medical marijuana. Does Dr. Cox want
Yeah,
to go on that?
yeah. So you want me to go on with it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this was brought to y'all a while back. It was actually back when we were meeting again. It's a standalone policy for medical marijuana to comply with that state requirement 8A. You might remember we had this under just our substance abuse and our tobacco use policy at one time, and the state came out and said, no, you need to do a standalone policy with it. It also addresses students' need and use of it, and that all attempts will be made to use it before, after, not on campus. And it does talk about like principals. They have to report to us if they have any issues or anything. This simply was brought to y'all. It was advertised, and I just need your approval.
Thank you, Doctor. Are there any questions? We open the public hearing. Okay, seeing no questions, we're opening a public hearing. Ms. Williams, are there any speakers to be heard during the public hearing?
Madam Chair, I have not received any public comments on this issue.
No public comment. So we'll close the public hearing. Is there, are there any questions, or we're ready to take a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Wood, second by Ms. Bowen. Show this unanimously approved. Item 19.02, Superintendent, following a public hearing, approval to a travel and per diem policy that repeals policy 6423. Is there a staff person who wants to elaborate prior to the public hearing?
I will, Madam Chair. So we're asking to rescind policy 6423, which is the use of credit cards. We no longer use the American Express cards. This was replaced with the P cards. And then we're also asking to make changes to policy 6550, which is our travel policy. We're removing an outdated in-county mileage chart. We're also clarifying who is eligible for in-county reimbursements, as well as putting in a denial process if certain travel reimbursement requests don't conform to our policy and procedures.
Very good. Are there any
Move
questions?
motion.
Thank you. Moved by Ms. Wood. Is there a second?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Williams? Oh, sorry. We have to call a public hearing. Excuse me. Ms.
It
Wood,
is a public, yeah.
you jumped the gun on me. All right. We are convening a public hearing on this item. Is there anyone to be heard during the public hearing on this revised policy?
Madam Chair, I have not received any public comments on this item.
All right. So we will close the public hearing. Now, Ms. Wood, if you'd like to make your motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Wood, second by Ms. Bowen. Any objection? Any questions? I should say first. Hearing none, are there any objections to approval? Hearing none, show this item unanimously approved. That takes us to 1903. The superintendent recommends approval to advertise amendments to policy on COVID virtual school board meeting guidelines. That's what we're doing right now. And adoption on August the 25th. Is there a, Ms. Williams?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. As you all remember, back in March of this year, the governor issued an executive order that waived the in-person meeting requirements for all public boards of the state. On March 24th, under that authority, this board adopted an emergency policy in line with that. Under state law, emergency policies only have a set duration and they cannot be repeated. If we need to extend the language of an emergency policy, we actually have to initiate rulemaking. So in light, we've had a couple of months of operating under this. We've seen the governor extend his executive order several times. And so what we have done is taken that emergency policy, made some revisions to it so that it now speaks in terms not of emergency, but in terms of virtual meeting, because we are still under that authority. And so we are bringing this now to you all under regular rulemaking for your consideration. I will note that in here, it talks about how our meetings will be in a virtual format. It also talks about public comment, and it provides for a method for the public to make sure that their comments are reasonably, that any comments that they have are reasonably heard by board members and by other members of the public through the use of a district established email address that we have had. Members of the public can send their comments to that email address before the start of each meeting. All comments received by the start of any public meeting will be provided to board members, as we have done in this meeting. They're going to be posted on the meeting agenda under persons to be heard, and they're going to be attached to the minutes. And then we include a statement that during the meeting or on any given meeting, if those public comments may be read if time permits. So depending on the voluminous nature of the comments that we have, they may be read as determined by the chair. But in every instance, they're going to be provided to the board. They're going to be posted under item 6, and they're going to be attached to the minutes of our meetings while we are having virtual meetings. That is all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. White. Hear a little feedback, sorry. Is there questions by board? Move approval.
Second. Darrell has it.
Okay, I'm sorry, motion by Ms. Wood, second by Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
Any objections? Without objections, show this unanimously approved. That takes us to 1904, safeguarding the business system informs the Tallahassee ratification of emergency purchase order. Staff member to present this item.
Dr. Cox.
I can also do it if Dr. Cox doesn't want to speak to it. These are the thermometers that we use or that we purchased and to provide to all of our teachers because of the time frame, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to get them in before the beginning of school. We didn't have time to do a competitive procurement, so that's why it's listed under an emergency procurement.
Okay.
Were there any questions? I think we've talked about this before. Now it's.
I move acceptance.
Of course. Moved by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Strickland. Are there any objections? I'm sorry. Any objections?
No.
Thank you. All right. Without objection, show it unanimously approved. That takes us to 19.05, Renaissance Learning Accelerated Reader and STAR Math License Agreement.
Ms. Gregory, you want to jump in on this one?
Yes. For your consideration this evening is the annual license renewal agreement with Renaissance Learning. This agreement covers the purchase of supplemental instructional programs such as Accelerated Reader, professional development, hosting support, and data integration, and the use of STAR Reading and Math for progress monitoring for students in the 2020-21 school year.
I move acceptance.
Second. Moved by Ms. Bowen, second by Ms. Wood. Any questions, comments, objections? No objections? Without objection, show it unanimously approved. That takes us to 19.06, which is the regular school year calendar. And obviously we are required to post this and submit it to the Department of Education. Is there a staff member that wants to take the lead on the presentation? And I suspect we'll have some questions or comments by board members. Mr. Superintendent?
Yeah, Dr. Gale, you wanna jump in
Here.
here?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Madam Chair, board members and superintendent. Item 1906, amendment to the regular school year calendar, has us starting the school year with our students, given that everything is going to be healthy and good, on August the 19th, on a Wednesday. Our teachers would come back on Monday, August 10th. They'll have a full week of training, come back that next week for 2 more days. That was a suggestion of the Reopen Leon Schools Task Force, as well as board members, our superintendent, Ms. Gregory, and her team as well. Adjustments have been made to the semester for the first semester as well as the second semester. Our year would end in June as a result of the changes that had to be implemented. This is for a full 178-day calendar with the necessary hours for the completion of the year.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Wood?
I have an amendment to the calendar recommendation.
Okay, I think to get in the proper posture, we need a motion and a second to have it ready to go, and then you can offer an amendment. Is there a motion and a second just to get it into the proper posture?
Move accepted.
Okay, moved by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Striplin. Offer an amendment.
Just to back up a little bit, we had a long discussion on this yesterday at our workshop, discussing many of the issues that we'll probably be talking about again later. I was asking if we could recommend this proposed calendar. I'm going to read it so I get it right. With a student start date of 8/19, but we agree to postpone in-person learning if the Leon County Health Department advises that the risks are too great, or that the Leon County School Board determines that Leon County schools cannot provide adequate health and safety measures to protect our staff, students, and families.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Is there a second to Ms. Wood's amendment?
I have an observation, and I don't know if this was intended that we would begin our discussion down this journey, make this journey right now. But I am of the opinion, and I mentioned this yesterday, that the governor, whether wittingly or unwittingly, when he provides the caveat whereby, based upon any recommendations or coming from our local health department, we are then equipped to then, although start our school date, but not have to come to brick and mortar facilities. And my concern is that if we wait until August 19th to prepare for such a determination, that we put the district at great disadvantage. I think that discussion may need to occur sooner than later, particularly as we are going to now be informed about what has been the school's responses, what have been parents' responses in terms of return, right? For example, if we wait until the last minute to make that decision, then everything goes into flux. I think that the reason other districts have made that determination early on, that they would forego returning to brick and mortar facilities, because they knew that they needed these weeks now to be able to adequately prepare for such a determination. Otherwise, if we wait until the 18th, we find ourselves, we put the staff, the leadership, the district, parents, and everyone in a flux that I think that is not intended, but by following science. I think we can, and again, the decision is ours, not the health department, but I think we could be informed of such determinations as early as now, so that students and principals talk about crafting a master plan, as Ms. McAllister talks about rehiring and re-engage until the nth hour puts us all at great disadvantage. So I just want to throw that out there for us to discuss as we talk about this calendar.
Okay.
Just to clarify my intention is to be public about the fact that we may have to postpone that 8/19 date, just so that the public understands that it's a possibility based on recommendations from the health department or from this board, is why I'm just trying to clarify that. So, because some people plan their lives around the school calendar, and I just wanted to make sure that people understand that we are in a very influx situation, and so that we have the ability, and also just to announce it publicly, that we may have to postpone school. But right now, this is our plan, but this is just an advisory to the community, really.
I don't think that a vote on this calendar right now precludes us from having the conversation that you're wanting to have. We have to stop the calendar to get it to DOE, but we can amend a calendar every time we meet, I guess, if need be. So I think just to meet the letter of the law and the expectations of the Department of Education, we may need to vote on a calendar now, with or without the caveat Ms. Wood is recommending, and get that calendar to the DOE. But we can still have the conversation that you want to have, perhaps with some medical professionals on our next call or meeting, and not wait until the last minute. I also want to just mention, I'm not an attorney, but my read and based on legal advice is that the governor's order provides those caveats for those counties that are still in phase 1, that's Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. As of yet, we are not there according to that particular criteria. So I don't know that we have the flexibility to put anything in concrete right now, but as we all know, this has been a moving target since it started. And so anything can happen. I'm just saying that in terms of upholding the law and fulfilling our legal responsibilities and the letter of the law, we may need to do this and then talk about that, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense, Madam Chair. It's just that I started us down this conversation because of the caveat, because of the rather specificity found in School Board Member Wood's amendment to this item. And so if we're going to make that level of specificity, I just figured that this would be prime time for us to discuss it, but I'm willing to defer following the superintendent's presentation. But I did want to make certain that I included that type of comment in our discussion, because I just think that based upon the specificity she provided in terms of the date that she provides, I just thought it required more discussion from all of us, that we need not wait until the nth hour.
Yes, Madam Chair.
What I think it is the superintendent who gave this date. Ms. Wood is trying to amend it to add clarity around the possibility to be changed. Ms. Bowen.
No problem.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with all that's been said. However, expectations and letter of the law. Ms. Wood, for my clarity, would you read that statement once again, please?
Yes.
I'll tell you what my concern is, please.
Okay. Recommend approval of the proposed school calendar with the student start date of 8/19. But we agree to postpone in-person learning if the Leon County Health Department advises that the risks are too great, or that the Leon County School Board determines that Leon County schools cannot provide adequate health and safety measures to protect our staff, students, and families.
Okay, I needed to hear that again, because I thought I heard that if the risk is too great to Leon County schools, then we would, outside of what the health department suggests or recommends, we would kind of be out there on our own. That is not what I have heard. I just needed to make certain that that is together. Am I correct? And
I'm saying that that's together, that we
yes.
consider that too. Now, it may be that the governor's order says that we can't I mean, we can always change the calendar. We may not be able to decide whether or not we're going to have brick and mortar, but it's our calendar. And so the amendment speaks to just that we might postpone our calendar if we don't feel it's safe to open on the 19th.
Okay. Well, this is an aside question to that, and maybe it might dovetail a little bit later on, but what legal issues might we face in any instance if we were to go with that, Madam Attorney?
If we were to go with the
With-
amendment?
Yes,
amendment?
with that and the risk and as was stated. Perhaps not.
I don't know that that the proposed amendment changes any ability that this board already has.
Okay.
If the board adopts or approves the calendar that's being proposed, even with the amendment, the board next week can approve a new calendar.
Right.
And the week after that can approve another new calendar. I think to Ms. Wood's point, her purpose in proposing this amendment is just so that the language of the motion is clear within itself, that there's an acknowledgement that it's flux, that it's not set in stone. Although we all recognize that the calendar dates are never really set in stone.
Right.
They are more in stone than they probably, I mean, in the past than they would be now. But I think it's just that acknowledgement. I don't see any legal change by or legal implication of the proposed amendment.
I move acceptance of the proposed amendment and the subsequent motion.
Madam Chair, I believe, I need to be corrected. I thought that Ms. Wood had already moved and you were looking for a second.
Well, Ms. Wood offered the amendment. I'm looking for a second. So Mr. Jones.
Second.
Ms. Bowen seconds.
I second.
Madam Chair, if
Mr.
I might, to make an amendment to a calendar, don't we have to first pass the calendar, then to put an amendment to the calendar?
No, we were in the motion. We had
Motion for the acceptance of the calendar in a second.
and then we had an amendment that was offered and seconded by Mr. Jones and then Ms. Bowen. And so now we are on the calendar as amended.
Yes.
Okay, I understand the language, and I think we all have that sentiment. I don't feel like it's necessary for us to make this amendment to the calendar. I don't think this amendment allows us anything that is outside of what we're allowed already. I think our community understands that we're in a state of flux, and that if there is a recommendation made by the county health department as outlined in the governor's order, that we would be able to adjust or change the start date in addition to postpone. I feel like this language, the second part of it, it goes off a little bit on that, or Leon County School Board determines that we cannot provide adequate health and safety. So then it's kind of leaving us out there kind of on our own. So it would be my preference we pass the calendar as is, with a statement to our community that we understand the extreme conditions we're in, and that we have the flexibility to change that calendar at any time, and we will do so as advised by the Department of Health and our own safety and health recommendations that are being made, with consideration, I would hope, by the Reopen Leon County Schools Task Force, which we had said we were going to reconvene them to help us as this, as our condition changed, which it drastically has in the last few weeks. So it would be my preference that we revert back to the original calendar. I understand the notion of Ms. Wood, and I agree with the sentiment, but I don't feel like it needs to be in writing in our calendar.
I would agree with that. And I would add one more thing. While I do greatly appreciate Ms. Wood's intent, which is to give transparency to the people who do plan their calendar, their own lives around the school calendar, I agree with Ms. Striplin's point that it may go a little far afoul of the legal parameters that we are required to, with which we're required to comply. Also, to her point, this is our calendar. Ms. Wood said, this is our calendar. And we've all said we can change the calendar every week if we want. The issue, though, that I want to make sure that our listening public understands is that the way that our funding stream is configured at this time, and has been forever, is based on seat time and based on a certain amount of children in a seat, whether it's on a computer virtually or in the classroom, for a certain number of hours or certain number of days per calendar year or in the calendar. And so yes, we can change the calendar, but there are financial implications if we do it in a way that is not consistent with the current FEFP. As I've said before, I hope COVID and this pandemic will be the impetus that we've been needing to get away from seat time funding and into performance and learning outcome funding. But we're far away from that right now. That's not on the table in the legislature today.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair. I am fine to withdraw the amendment. I really just wanted the discussion. I wanted us to have a robust discussion and for the community to understand that this is our adopted calendar for right now, but that it could change based on the health department or based on our school board deciding that we need to wait 2 more weeks. And we're trying to work collaboratively with the superintendent and all of his staff, and the calendar is a big deal. I would also just say that in the past, we have, I've been in the system so long. I remember when we used to have the first semester in January, and there were reasons that we really tried hard to get it before the holidays. But there are other reasons to let it go into January. So I just don't think has to be our main thing that we're worrying about right now when we have such safety concerns. Right. So I just wanted us to discuss the calendar, and that was my way to do it. But I'll happily withdraw the amendment. We can vote on the calendar, understanding that next week conditions change or the health department advises us or we make a different choice, right, that we can change it. And I want the public to understand that.
Right.
All right, Ms. withdrawn the amendment. That takes us back to the original item as recommended by the superintendent, which would be to approve the calendar.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Williams.
Hyper-technical point. Ms. Wood withdrew her motion. Have we confirmed that Ms. Bowen is withdrawing her second? Just so that we have that in the minute.
Ms. Bowen.
Yes, I am withdrawing my second, and I need to ask a couple of questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're back on the original item as recommended by the superintendent. There was a motion and a second already. So is there any objection to approving the superintendent's recommended calendar as is? Seeing no objection, show the calendar unanimously approved with the understanding that we've had this robust conversation yesterday and today, and we are all painfully aware that anything could change at any time. All right, Ms. Owen, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you. I was just thinking in the distant past, when we didn't have COVID, there was a time when we kind of synchronized our calendars with that of the universities. I suspect that given the unprecedented nature of what we're doing now, that perhaps we did not have a chance to do this time. And I just needed to mention that. The other thing that I wondered about, we had that wonderful task force of committee members assisting us in what we were trying to do with reopening our schools safely. Have we given any thought to how we might use that task force again, or if there's an appetite for that, or at this point, we just know that we will keep them close to us and use them? I don't want to say use them, but ask for their assistance on an as needed basis. Just wanted to throw that out.
Madam Chair.
Comments.
I'm sorry, Dr. Gale?
Yes, ma'am. If I may, I can answer Ms. Bowen's questions about synchronizing our calendars to TCC, FAMU, and FSU.
Yes.
It's the board.
Okay.
I sit on that joint calendar committee. The
Yes.
main thing that we try and do, because the universities, as you all know, they're on totally different hours than we are. The main thing that they wanted to make sure that is synchronized is spring break. Superintendent did not recommend any change to our spring break. So the spring breaks as it stands today, unless there is something else that the universities, they change, it is still synchronized.
Wonderful. Thank you, ma'am.
And to your question with regard to the task force, I would certainly think that it may be appropriate for us to consider sooner than later another joint call with perhaps with Mark O'Brien from TMH or
Yes.
both hospitals and the health department. Mr. Superintendent, do you want to respond to that with your,
I can, Madam Chair. I'm open for anything. Yeah, if we want to, pull the group back together and give them get an update next week.
Yep.
Maybe let me talk to Dr. Gale if that's y'all's pleasure. If we want to try to pull them together, what's today, Tuesday?
Yep.
Maybe I know we're going to be together again on on Tuesday. So see if we can get them together Monday. I'm sure they've been paying attention. Let me talk to her. But if that's what you'd like to do, yeah, we can certainly pull them together. I can give them an update and then listen to any other. They're also listening to what's going on in the state and across the country. So if that's how y'all feel, that we can certainly get them back together either at the end of this week or on Monday, and hear what the members have to say.
Great. Madam Chair, I think that would be an excellent idea for these partners to continue to partner with us at this time, because this thing is fluid, it's constantly moving, and we want to know what they're thinking, and we welcome that, Mr. Superintendent. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Jones, and then Mr.
Oh, Ms. Strickland, if she was before me, I don't mind deferring.
You're so kind.
Well, I would like for us to revisit a point that I made at this particular time as we talk about the engagement of the.
I thought you were deferring to me. What happened?
Oh, you took a breath. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
You can't do that around there.
Man, you can't delay with Daryl around. He's gonna take your spotlight.
Well,
go ahead, Daryl.
I defer to. Okay, well, yesterday in our agenda review meeting, I talked about how I would like for us to meet, for us to publicly announce and schedule that we will meet every week between now and the projected date for the opening of schools on August 19th. At which time this may be opportunity for us to provide at the same time as we receive updates from the superintendent. This will also give us opportunity to receive updates from the epidemiologists possibly associated at the Institute of Urban Public Health, at Florida A&M University, the Leon County Health Department, as well as our regional health care facilities, TMH. But I think that will give context to our work as we continue to move forward. This takes me back to what I mentioned earlier when we talked about, although Ms. Wood took us down, started that discussion, right? And then backed out of that discussion. But the discussion is still nonetheless altogether important. And that is that we be informed with the best science and data moving forward, that we can equip our talented team of geniuses and staff and leadership that they can prepare for the opening of schools. And so my motion will be, most simply, is that the school board would be convened on a weekly basis heretofore until the opening of schools to consider all data associated, heretofore associated with our local community and its impacts on the opening of schools. And any updates provided also by the superintendent and district staff.
Okay, let me hang on for a second in terms of procedure here. We were still on the calendar. Right? And we had a motion and we had a second.
I thought we finished that.
There was a motion and a second. You asked for any objections. Seeing none, you said it was approved. And then there were comments.
Right. I have some questions. Right.
What I'm getting to, Mr. Jones, is just hang on a minute. I mean, I think, first of all, we're not in the right posture to have a motion on the weekly meetings right now, but I think we agreed yesterday by consensus that those were going to be noticed anyway. But
I thought we couldn't make a decision at an agenda review. That's why I thought I had to bring it up today.
Well, and there is an agenda item. It's 19.10. Yes, 19.10 that has future meeting dates. And I believe it's been amended to add in a meeting on those off Tuesdays, as was discussed yesterday. That was added to the agenda today.
I apologize. And thank you, Dr. Gale.
Yeah, we just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Gale.
All right.
Sir, Mr. Jones.
But we appreciate your enthusiasm, Mr. Jones. And we did hear you yesterday, and we will hear you again tonight. So let's take up, getting back to the agenda, 19.07 is where which is the MOU between the Leon County Schools and the Neighborhood Medical Center. I think this is the one for rapid testing, if I'm not.
Yes, it is.
Dr. Cox.
Yeah, yeah. So this is an MOU with Neighborhood Medical Center that they will provide. I think we started with 2,500 rapid tests for our employees. This will really help us a lot. Y'all may remember Neighborhood Medical Center. They're the group that funded the clinic at Rickards. We have a full service clinic, doctors, dentists, all that over there at Rickards.
Right.
So now what this does is this allows, and we had a big meeting today, we'll be working this through Todd, our new risk management director. And so if an employee needs to, we can get them over there and get them rapid testing. They will leave with their results. Otherwise, you have to, the minute they go get tested, they're out until the results come back. This will really expedite us knowing and the return of the employee. So it is a big time win-win. And just, it's,
yes, it is.
Y'all will approve it.
Yeah. I move approval.
I will second that quickly.
Okay, moved by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Bowen. I just want to add my kudos to you, Dr. Cox, and you, Mr. Superintendent.
Yes.
I have friends and colleagues in South Florida, I'm sure we all do, who've been waiting for weeks for their test results, and they're quarantining in the meantime. And if this is our workforce that we are trying desperately to protect and keep them as safe as possible and needing to trace any spread, this is critically important, and I'm very, very grateful for your leadership and for the resulting MOU. So there's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye.
No objection. Show it unanimously approved. Thank you.
Madam Chair, question.
Ms. Triplett.
Thank you, Alan. That's a great partnership that we have with them. Question is, does that apply to family members or just the employee?
Just the employee. Yeah.
Right now we're on employee. Let me jump in. Another partnership we're working on. I've had several conversations with Mark O'Brien at TMH. Florida State University is building through their mag lab, three high-tech machines that can do rapid testing at a very high success rate, probability rate of over 99%. Two of those, from what I understand, they're keeping for their population of faculty members and students. One they are giving to Tallahassee Memorial Hospital to help in the community. Mark, or Mr. O'Brien, has committed to us, or was in the process of helping us with this same thing with our employees. So Tallahassee Memorial Hospital, hopefully within the next week or two, will also be on board to help process our employees in a very timely manner. Look, guys, this is the thing that's gonna cripple us. It's all the contact tracing and with the flu, you're out, you're sick, you have symptoms, you don't go to work, you don't go to school. Once you're symptom free for 24 hours, then you return. This is a whole different animal. So if we had just true flu-like protocol, then I feel a lot better than I do right now, but we don't. Unfortunately, we have all of these quarantines, and you have to wait 72 hours before you can get tested, and then you're waiting on the test results. And if you have somebody in the house, and Alan will speak to this later, it could be several weeks before we get those employees back. That's going to be the thing that I fear the most, that will cripple our return. But thankful to you, Dr. Cox, Neighborhood Medical Clinic, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, TMH, that can help us in this effort as well, that our employees are out, we can get them turned around and back in the classroom or on the school buses in a safe manner as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland, did you have a?
I'm going to hold my, I'd rather keep us on track, but I do have some questions when we get back to the reopen. I'll just hold it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. So we've approved that. That takes us to a happy note, 1909. I'm sorry, wait. 1908, excuse me.
1908.
Item 19.08 is our community school, which is Sable Palm Elementary. And they have we have a partnership with lots of folks at that school, but in this particular case, I wanted to make sure to acknowledge the Knight Creative Communities Institute and other vendors who have come up with volunteer hours and in-kind services to create a bicycle path at Sable Palm. Is there anyone, Mr. Albritton, I see you've joined us. Did you want to add to that?
I was just ready, prepared to make the motion for the superintendent's recommendation.
All right, well, I asked that we take that off of consent to at least thank our partners who've created. It's so nice to have something positive to talk about, for even if it's just for a second.
Absolutely.
Grateful to the Knight communities and our friends that have partnered with us over at Sable Palm. And this is a beautiful thing that they've done, and it's worth at least $35,000, although it would appear that there might be an extra zero on the agenda item that we may need to correct.
Oh, really?
For the good of the record. But that said, is there a motion and a second?
I move acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Wood. Any objection?
No objection, but I would like to make an observation, please.
Yes, sir.
I'm very, very delighted about what the Knight Creative Institute initiative is going to do at Sable Palm in District 3. As you all know, Sable Palm is our community partnership school. Their innovation to take what had been a dead space and make it come alive, particularly to the benefit of our young people, shows exactly how innovative this group of leaders are, and that the impact of what their work will mean to our young people, to the faculty, to the leadership of that school is going to be is going to be great and significant. And I just want to tell them thank you on behalf of everyone in District 3 and on behalf of Sable Palm and its fine principal, Anisha Robinson, and the entire Patriot family.
Ditto.
I would agree with that. I think it was back in, I think it was 2014 that Gil Ziffer first came to me about creating and bringing this model to Tallahassee. And I was thrilled to be on the front lines of making that happen way back then. And it's so exciting for me to see all different pieces of it come together for District 3 and Sable Palm and the entire community there. So, all right, without objection, I think it's unanimously approved. That takes us to the MOU with the South City Foundation, item 19.09. Mr. Superintendent?
You're muted.
No, I'm sorry. Dr. Gay, are you going to speak to this one?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Superintendent, board members. On yesterday, we had a robust presentation by Courtney Atkins, who is the Executive Director of the South City Foundation, Dr. Iris Wilson, who is the Education Chair of South City Foundation, and Dr. Rhonda Flanagan, the principal at Hartsfield Elementary School. This is a re-up, if you will, of our Memorandum of Understanding. What the group did on yesterday during our agenda review is give us an update on how the project is going, as well as an update on the needs assessment, which is a part of the MOU that was presented to us last year and is also a part this year. The only main thing that changes from what you approved last year to this year is not only are they incorporating Hartsfield Elementary School, they're looking in the pipeline, which would include Fairview Middle School and James S. Rickards High School.
I'd like to move approval of this wonderful project. So proud that the district is involved in this. Really appreciate all the work that's going into it for from the South City Foundation.
Second. All right. Motion by Ms. Wood, second by Ms. Strickland. Any objection?
None.
Seeing none, it is unanimously approved after a lengthy presentation yesterday. I don't want friends there to think that we are skimming by this really important item. It's just that we did spend a bit of time on it, not only yesterday, but for the past couple of years. So
Absolutely.
In fact, we asked that the PowerPoint that was given to us yesterday be added to this agenda item, so it's part of the record. It's a really good PowerPoint. If people want to know more about the South City Foundation, I would appreciate that.
I'll take care of that.
That's a great idea, and or a link
Great idea.
on our website would be just
Yeah, even better.
all right, thank you. That takes us to 19.10. Do we need to still do 19.10, the calendar amendment?
Yeah, this is for school board meetings.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading calendar and thinking we had already been there done. Okay, forgive me.
This was my enthusiasm.
Yes, that's right. Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Jones, would you like to explain the item?
I do, but I believe I already have. I think everyone is clear about what it is our intentions are, that we would be able to equip, be both educated, equipped, and empowered by virtue of our meeting weekly up until the start of vacations and updates provided by our local public health professionals, as well as, of course, our superintendent and district staff.
All right. So Mr. Jones moves the item for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Don't know who did that first. Ms. Bowen. All right. Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Bowen. Without objection. No objection. Show it unanimously approved. Thank you. We have some things that we are looking at that we don't need to discuss tonight. The financial statements for May, that's a routine item. That takes us to 22, the superintendent's comments, and then into continuing concerns. I'm wondering if, Mr. Superintendent, do you want to tee this up and then we can talk about person to be heard and
I can. Did y'all put a pin in persons to be heard? Did y'all discuss it?
we did not. We moved it because everything's about reopening schools, I think. So I can ask Ms. Williams to go into persons to be heard and then you can respond if after that with your comments.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Jones.
I thought we were going to satisfy everything on the agenda before and then manage that last. We still have some continuing concerns from School Board Member Wood, Bowen, and I, which we could satisfy, and then the balance of our conversation would be devoted entirely to the superintendent and his presentation.
We can do that. I thought that all of the continuing concerns also related to the pandemic, or do they not? I know Ms. Wood.
Mine is not.
Okay, let's go.
And I don't know about Ms. Bowen.
Mine's not listed on here.
Your name is listed, madam.
I'm sorry?
Your name is listed, you're item 23.03.
Ms. Bowen, it says, please have someone speak to address safety in all areas of the system, such as testing.
Yes. Okay, well.
We'll get into that. Okay, so let's go back, Mr. Jones, to 23.02. If that has not to do with COVID, we can go ahead and take that up now.
Well, this is a presentation I'd like to make to you all on behalf of myself and my colleague, Ms. School Board Member Bowen, a faculty member, Michelle Pletch from District 3 Fort Braden Elementary School, came to the both of us with an idea about following our having posted what was our response to providing commentary on race matters in our community. And she has come to us with what I thought is what we both believe is a noteworthy idea, that we would convene a committee that would deal with issues of race and equality in our school district. And what their responsibilities would be would to provide some insight into a review of our current policies. And quite frankly, we would, as a board, help to author the responsibilities in consultation with staff about the responsibilities of this task force. It would be peopled with persons that we would appoint, but it goes back to what has been earlier conversations that first started with Ms. Bowen when I first got on the board, and that was that we wanted to make certain that we as a district were sensitive to issues of race, misogyny, homophobia, and other issues that stand between us being a united district. And so we thought that this task force coming to us at the recommendation of Ms. Pletch would be a fantastic way for us to get a handle on what has been infrequent conversation since I've been on this board. And so with your help, I'd like to recommend or offer a motion for us to consider after any additional consideration and discussion. Ms. Bowen, would you also like to say something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you. Appreciate your bringing this up, and it is something that we've been discussing for a while. You know, we've been talking about equity and cultural awareness and those kinds of issues that make us all a better community. So if this task force is convened, it would promote in our minds a kind of a welcoming and respectful and inclusive community, which would allow individuals to discuss personal differences and similarities that we find in our community. It would examine and review best practices, curriculum development, and district-wide data, discuss challenges, identify strategies, and provide ongoing training for our teachers and our instructional leaders. Michelle Pletch is a former student of mine from Florida State and now is a current teacher in District 3 and is eager to, I think, be involved in this, if not lead it to the extent that that would be appropriate. So I certainly hope that it would be something that we could do, provide an opportunity for our teachers who might be interested or community members who like to be a part of this to work with us on this. And I think that during these times that we're living in, the more community involvement that we've got in the way of educating our parents and our students and our staff, it just would add to the quality of the educational process. And I think it could also contribute to the well-being of our students, our faculty, our staff, and it would just be a great return into safety yet in the way of thought and engaging conversation about this. So I hope it's something that we can move fast on and have this task force presented with the help of the superintendent and staff. So that's where we are. Thanks, Mr. Jones. And we'd love to hear additional comments about this.
Madam Chair.
Alex?
I'd like to say, I believe either 2 school board meetings ago, we talked about this, wanting to really make sure that we don't lose sight of our issues around this issue as we struggle with COVID, because they need to be side by side as we begin school. Hopefully we're going to begin school in some form anyway, and that this is an important topic. So I'm glad you're bringing it back up. There are some things we don't need a task force for. We could just get started on because we've been talking about it a long time, which has to do with staff development and has to do with student development and de-escalation techniques.
Absolutely.
All sorts of things that we could get started on now. So what I would say is perhaps at one of our meetings that we're going to have in the future, we could hear from the superintendent and staff of what they've already got planned, because this is not a new topic for the fall to address this. And in addition to having some ongoing task force that sort of oversees it and makes sure that we stay on track and it's not just a one-shot thing. So I appreciate you bringing it up, and would also just like to hear what the district plans are on this issue.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Superintendent, do you want to talk about district plans, or do you want to hear?
No, I think I need a little more time. I mean, we could do something for you all at our next agenda review if you want. I know Dr. Rogers, I've given her an assignment, but she's not ready to report out yet. So, but just know you have been heard. I will get with my staff tomorrow, and we'll prepare something for you, some type of presentation on the 27th of August at our next agenda review, if that's okay.
Great. That would be great.
That's fine. I think Ms. Wood's point is well made. I am aware although the superintendent has not mentioned it, they have already have plans for this type of instruction on racial sensitivity and cultural sensitivity as a part of the professional development that the superintendent has planned for all of our faculty as a part of their instruction when they return. So yes, I'm aware that sorry, Mr. Superintendent. Okay. I'm aware that we are doing that. What I do not want to see happen is I want to make certain that we manage this, that this ultimately occurs. We have had these types of conversations in the past, and I just want us to, the reason I wanted to provide a motion and equip the staff to come back to us with a recommendation such that about this task force, because I don't want it to go away and not be revisited. That is my concern. The first time I heard this conversation was when I first got elected by Ms. Bowen. So I understand Ms. Wood's concern about the district and their input, which is critical to the success of any task force, but I want to make certain that it does occur.
And I would just add to that, and I don't mean in any way at all to take away from the prominence you've placed on this particular piece, but I think this goes hand in hand, and that is when our students come back, the kids that left us at spring break are not the same people that are going to be coming back.
I made that comment, yes.
I knew I heard it from somebody important.
That's so nice.
But I really think that's so true, and whether it is, and again, I want to keep your purpose and your intent of this task force in the forefront. Yes. I think also that our kids are coming back having perhaps just a myriad of issues, right? They maybe parents have been unemployed, maybe there are food insecurity issues, there are domestic violence issues, there's
all of the above
that has happened to many of our kids. And add to that the political and racial unrest that they're watching on TV that's happening or participating in a march, or we're seeing firsthand around the corner from where they live. And so I think all of those things sort of go together in a way, but I want to refer to you all on how the task force addresses all of these things.
Okay, Madam Chair, I appreciate your mentioning that, and allow me please to just add to my earlier statements in prior meeting and remind us on the board and our listening audience that 32304 area code is here in Tallahassee. And as we start to talk about reopening schools and safety and looking out for individuals, I ask that we keep in mind the blood runs where it's needed the most. I ask that we keep in mind that we in 32304, by some individuals' account, were already in a pandemic before the pandemic of the virus happened. I say that because where there is the greatest need, I hope that we can provide those kind of services for that particular population and those children and those families. So as we continue to look and plan and ask others to assist us in providing for the safety and the education and the counseling services needed, you know, we got a triple whammy often in some of our communities. So I don't want to go without saying that today. And as you all are, we are the voice of those individuals who elected us to be here. And we certainly want them to know that we are looking out for them and recognize that, yes, they have needs, and yes, they have jobs, but also we want to do what we need to do to help to keep the children alive. And I guess I'm getting into the topic that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but if you don't have a kid that's alive, you can't teach the kid. Okay, then, I mean the child. I see the look that you're giving me, Attorney Williams, so I'll just get to the other part of the agenda, but that just really needed to be said right now. I've got many phone calls, you know, and I ask you have too, about where we're really going with this and who's looking out for who and how do we need to, where do we need to step? What actions do we need to take to make certain that those underserved in our community have everything that they need when we start to look at this overall picture of safety and distancing. Okay, I'm done for now.
Mr. Superintendent, I'll go back to what your recommendation is, that you said that you would bring back an agenda item for us to talk about in consultation with Dr. Rogers relative to this possible convening of a possible task force and other activities associated with the equality matters in the district. And we'll be able to deal with it then. I just want to make certain I did not need to make a motion, but that you are already committed to doing the same.
Yes, sir. We'll have something to prepare for you all the 27th. She just needs a little time to work on it.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Ms. Bowen, are you satisfied?
Yes, I think we're on our way. We have a promise and an almost date. We're just looking forward to when we will get information and start the balls rolling or the train or running, whichever is correct.
I just want you to be happy, Mrs. Bowen.
All right. Thank you.
So my continuing concerns are all related to reopening of schools. So I would just ask that, and I'm assuming that Dr. Cox and Superintendent are going to cover most of them, but if we could just go back at the end, if there's some that didn't get covered, that I can make sure they do get covered, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
So
you.
I think we're at.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so I think we are now at the point where we are going to conversation around the pandemic and reopening schools. And given that the requests for persons to be heard are all on that topic, and they're a
Voluminous.
unusually large number of emails which we have all seen, I'm going to ask Ms. McKinney-Williams to speak to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we all know, Florida law gives members of the public the opportunity, a reasonable opportunity to be heard on a proposition that comes before the board. This COVID-19 pandemic has necessitated a shift in how we hold our public meetings and in how public comment is made. Since the start of virtual meetings, the public has been given the opportunity to make comments through the submission to a district established email address. The board has tonight approved the advertisement of a revision to its policy addressing virtual meetings and public comments. Concerning public comment specifically, that amendment gives the public a reasonable opportunity to be heard in the following manner. I mentioned this earlier, I'm just going to repeat it in the following manner. The public notices include, our public meeting notices include that district established email address for public comments. All public comments received by the start of a meeting are sent to board members and the superintendent for review, are attached to item 6 of the agenda for the public to see, and will be attached to the minutes of the meeting once the meeting minutes have been prepared. The amendment also provides that comments may be read at the meeting if time permits. Speaking to the board chair's statement, as of the start of this meeting, we had 137 public comments. Most of those are a page to a page and a quarter, a page and a half. And so there are quite a few comments. And so in light of that, and in light of the fact that they have been, and Dr. Gale, I'm going to defer to you, been added to item 6 as I'm scrolling up. Yes, they have been added to item 6. They have been all provided to board members for review, and they will be added to the minutes of this meeting. They need not be read at this meeting, but I leave that final determination up to you all.
So according to quick math, to read the 137 emails that we received would be about another 2.5 hours, approximately. And I in no way want for anyone who submitted comments to think that we are ignoring. I'm gonna ask the board to weigh in here, because we had already started talking about this, and then today we had a substantial uptick in the number of comments. I do want to remind everyone that we convened about 20 focus groups in different areas. We had a task force that dug very deep into many issues. In my estimation, most of the emails I'm receiving are, in one way or another, largely duplicative, because we're all grappling with the same concerns. I mean, do we know, Ms. Williams, do you have a general breakdown on how many people wrote in to say reopen schools now versus don't reopen yet?
Based on my review, and it was a kind of a quick review as we were getting them in, of the approximately 137, there were less than 10 that were in favor of students returning to brick and mortar. There were a couple that didn't have a firm opinion one way or the other. They raised a lot of concerns, about 6 or 7. There was one dealing with that equity and discrimination matter that Ms. Bowen and Mr. Jones talked about. The remainder all either spoke in terms of delay the start time completely or move to digital. So approximately 120-ish of that total 137, Madam Chair.
And we all received, I'm getting feedback. We all received an email from Mr. Major on behalf of LCTA. He and the LCTA conducted a poll of approximately, and this is off the top of my head, I don't have it in front of me, approximately, according to him, 500 or so teachers. And overwhelmingly, those responded with, we would rather and feel more comfortable and more safe teaching offsite, not on campus. So I think probably the bulk of the emails we've received tonight are from teachers who are very concerned about their own health and safety and returning to work. I know personally, I received a good number of folks who said, I'll take a leave of absence, I'll take an early retirement, I won't go back. And of course that impacts our workforce. On the other hand, we have parents who have overwhelmingly, I think based on the latest numbers, and I'll ask the superintendent to speak to this in a minute, opted for brick and mortar teaching to send their kids back. And the business community and others have expressed, in addition to the Pediatric Society, have expressed great concern about the social and emotional well-being of children and their need to be together. So this is a very difficult conversation. This has been a very, very difficult few months. And we have all really struggled with every point that has been raised. I think that's why we want to bring the task force back together. We want to bring our health professionals back together. We had the conversation about the calendar tonight, so I don't want anyone to feel like you're being cut off, but I want to leave that. I want to ask the board for, what is your pleasure? Do we try to speed read through? I don't think we can read some and not all. I think most of us have read many of them ourselves independently, or we will be between now and the next time we meet. This is not a decision that's going to be made tonight. It's a moving target. If the health department comes in, everything could change in 2 days. So that's just sort of my frame around thinking. But I would love to hear your thoughts on where to go from here for this evening and prior to our next meeting.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Jones.
Regarding the persons to be heard, we have the district staff, Dr. Guillermo specifically, has shared that information with us in 2 separate editions to ensure that all persons to be heard, we received their responses to us in writing, that we would, most of which we have already read. She's provided those comments almost up until to the start of our meeting. And so is responsible and ethical electeds will take time to read the public comment being made. However, and we can follow the example that we currently see for both the city and the county commission, who also receive voluminous amounts of of commentary and their persons to be heard, but that information is shared with the members of the commission. It is included as Ms. Wood described as a part of our public record, and Ms. Obama Kenny Williams is described as a part of our public record, as an agenda item, and so it is then cataloged and chronicled for public access beyond the time of our meeting. But I believe I believe that should be sufficient.
I would agree with Mr. Jones. We've read and received several emails, and we appreciate everyone's input. And these are not easy decisions. We hear you, and we're reading. And even if we don't respond, we're getting your words, and we appreciate your input. And we're not trying to shut anybody off by doing this. I would agree that this process has been outlined by the city and county, and I feel that we're just in following their lead and taking those comments into consideration. I don't think by us reading them one by one for the next several hours are gonna, the message is gonna be heard without laboring this meeting for that long. We have a lot to discuss. And again, I think what Dee Dee said it very well, no decision is gonna be made tonight as we wait for guidance from the state, from the governor, and Department of Education and the Department of Health, and we will take everyone's input into consideration. So I would agree that we stick with Ms. McKinney Williams' recommendation that these go digital and we not read these aloud tonight.
Ms. Wood or Ms. Bowen?
Given the time, I am fine with that. I would like it to be, sometimes it's hard to find where the minutes are for the meetings, and I would just ask that we post this in a prominent place on our webpage, so people, because there were some mighty articulate, thoughtful letters that we received, and people took the time to do it. So I want to make sure that anybody that wants to read them has total access to them. I've spent most of the day reading them, and I really want to say thank you to the people who took the time to tell us. I do have one question. The LCTA presented some data that they collected, and that seems a little bit different to me.
That's what I was going to ask.
I would like to hear that data. That's the one exception I would like to make.
And I would wonder how that is aligned with the superintendent's polling of middle and high school teachers, because it seems very different. So I think that is one point that might need to be highlighted tonight.
Yes. Madam Chair?
Ms. Bowen, and before you, Ms. Williams, do you have that email?
I'm looking at it.
You read that for us. Let me call Ms. Bowen, and then if that's your pleasure, we can hear that. Is that acceptable to everybody?
Go. Am I speaking now? What are we doing? Are you calling me? I'm sorry.
I was going to call on Ms. Bowen and then ask Williams to read at Ms. Wood's request and.
Yes. Okay, that would be fine. I'm interested as well in knowing the data from the LCTA, but I agree that the number of responses that we have tonight are quite large, and we are spending the time to read them and thank our community for always being in a position to share with us what they are thinking. And we want to know that even tonight, as we make the decisions about what we're going to do with this situation, they certainly will be welcome to let us know what they're thinking. I also see this again, as my colleagues have stated already, that this is another opportunity to have that task force be involved in what we're doing. Just needed to add that. I'm ready to listen to the LCTA response.
Before we read the LCTA information, are we aware, is there survey or poll, is it of the entire faculty of Leon County Schools, or was it cherry picked like the last thing they presented to us and only included their members?
I would imagine it's their members, but we can let the email speak for itself. The other idea would be that in our next workshop on this topic, which is going to be weekly, that we could have the LCTA and the superintendent's data, which might be updated. Right now, with the parent responses, we've got a good number of schools that are at 90 to 100% response rates, but we're still waiting. So I think maybe it would be, I mean, I'm happy, Ms. Wood, to have this read tonight, but I think maybe to get the full picture, maybe the way to approach the next workshop would be to talk about the parent data, the teacher data based on the superintendent's interactions with middle and high school teachers on the block scheduling, and then also the LCTA. And for those,
I agree with you, Ms. Rasmussen. I agree with you, particularly about including the LCTA in our future discussions. I just wanted to be certain that what we were going to now be sharing most publicly was what is their survey population, and I think that the public needs to be informed of that if we're going to read that aloud compared to everything else that we're just archiving. That's all.
Madam Chair, may I ask how many members are there in the LCTA group? Is that, does someone know?
it's my understanding, and I hesitate to say this, I think we should maybe let them to speak for themselves, but I believe based on teachers that pay their dues through payroll deduction, that we think they could be in the 30% range.
I think it's 50%. They had to reach 50% last year in order to stay.
There are 1,186 paying dues members in LCTA.
Thank you.
So, Dina?
Yes.
There are how many dues paying members, and how?
1,186.
As of today, or as of this month?
As of the last, right, because their dues are deducted through payroll.
And what percentage of, that's a pretty high number. That's more than 50, right?
We usually range between about 2,300 teachers in the district. So that was the last count that I took. Superintendent Hannah?
Yeah, it's not over 50. We gave them an extension. They asked earlier this year for an extension.
Yes.
Once this whole thing started, and we of course granted them that extension. So as they were recruiting new members to join, because we didn't want them, we want to, obviously for many reasons, they were granted that extension. So I think it's probably hovering maybe just right around 50, maybe just under 50. But we granted them the extension of more time for that deadline to get the 50% or greater.
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to say, for those who are listening who may not know what we're talking about, the LCTA is the teachers union. And to me, our teachers are our teachers, whether they're in the union or not. They are our people, and we care about them, and we want them to be safe, and we want them to be healthy, and we want them to be able to teach our children. And so we don't need to go in the weeds too much on this, but I appreciate your comment, Mr. Jones, because we did get a little confused a couple meetings ago when we thought that all teachers had been invited to participate, and it turned out that it was only the union. So that would be half of our teachers, presumably, based on what you said.
Madam Chair. As I said, I would like to hear the survey read, but if not, I would ask that if the concern is that everyone hasn't weighed in on this question, which I think there were several questions, and a lot of it had to do with your comfort level of teaching in a live environment, brick and mortar. So I would ask the district to do the survey. The LCTA cannot survey anybody but their own members because they don't have access to that. But to my knowledge, the district hasn't done that survey. And I think it's something that we should do, and I would love to see the data.
Mr. Superintendent?
So I've been reading actually letters for the last 20 or 30 minutes, listening to you all. Read a very compelling letter, and it's well over 3 minutes. I mean, from some of my former English teachers at Leon High School. And guys, it is a mess. And we promised we were going to keep our people safe, our kids safe, our teachers safe, and they're on the front lines every single day. And I'm sure there are a lot of them that are not happy that we're not reading all 100 and however many there were, but some of them are well over 3 minutes, and then they put a lot of time, energy, and effort. But I can promise you, I read many today. Lots of them were sent like right before the meeting. So I've been reading, and I will continue to read every single one of them. I saw the survey results. It has a number of them. It speaks to them not, the bottom line is a number of our teachers do not feel safe returning in any form or fashion. They just don't. And I get it. And I think that's something that we are going to have to address in the days to come. And I'm sure there are many that are not happy that we're not going to sit here and read 130 some odd comments. Many of them would take 8 to 10 minutes or more to read. But I get the gist of it. I think all of us do. And we hear you. I hear you. I know Ms. McAllister hears you. I know you guys hear them. My wife's a teacher. I don't want to put my wife in I don't want to put my family in harm's way. And, you know, we're caught in a horrible position. And I believe, though, that we're going to get it right by August the 19th. And if it's not August the 19th, whenever, we're going to get it right. And we're going to do the very best we can to protect our children and our employees. As far as numbers, unless you want to keep going down this road, to the point of Mr. Mazur's survey, I think there were a number of I think there were 500 teachers that responded, a little over 500 teachers that responded. I assume they were all LCTA members. I know LCTA sent out something last night encouraging members to comment and to reply to the survey, to have their voices heard. And that's what unions are for. And that's why they have a voice. But our teachers that are not in unions, they have a voice too, right? And we're here for all 2,300 of them. The gist of it was that the vast majority of those 500, they're not in a good place. They would rather stay at home and teach in the digital academies. They would rather not step foot on campus, given even the mask and the other protocols that we have in place. And I get it. And your voices are being heard. We've heard from the survey I did with secondary teachers it was more about the recommendation coming from the task force about limiting the number of transitions per day. That we cohorted kids in elementary school, move teachers around and keep the kids in place. In secondary, we can do that. In secondary, it's much more problematic. With 6 classes a day, there are 5 transitions. So it was my recommendation that we move to 3 classes a day with only 2 transitions. And then our teachers, as opposed to being exposed to 100% of the students that are on their rosters, are only exposed every day by day to 50%. And our students, only having 3 classes a day, would only be exposed to 50% of their classmates on any given day. So the health benefits coming from the task force of that recommendation to me made a lot of sense, but it meant teachers were going to have longer class periods. So in going to a block schedule, we go from a 50-minute class to a 100-minute class. I needed to hear from them. And their administrators, every single administrator I talked to says, guys, we're getting new devices, we're getting new learning management system, we're getting new content. Moving to block schedule is just another thing. So before I even brought that forward, I wanted to hear from them. And so we did Zoom conferences with all of our, opened it up, invited every teacher in middle school, and then I did another one in high school. We had 500 teachers. There's like 840 secondary teachers in middle and high school. Of that, we had over 500 respond. 89.6 of them preferred the longer classes with fewer transitions and less student contact. Was the question asked? Do you feel comfortable returning at all? No, that question was not asked. If you are asking me to ask that question, I certainly will ask that question. I need to figure out how we're going to frame it.
Yes, I am asking you to ask that question because we need to know how they feel. And I totally respect, and the reason I wanted the letter and I still do want the letter from the union, we have decided not to read all the comments. And I think that as a courtesy to them who took the trouble to do a survey of this, that we should at a minimum read it out tonight. So I'm still requesting that.
Okay, so I'll just be quiet and y'all read the letter and then I'll start back again.
Okay.
But I apologize. I know we're all exhausted. I read so many of those letters today that I literally cried through half of them. But I want to say I'm a little frustrated because in many past several meetings, I have said, are the principals talking to their teachers? Do they know that teachers want and are willing to come back? Do we know what our workforce is going to look like if we go back? And so I don't mean to be critical because I know this has been such a moving target that what they might have said 3 weeks ago might be different today. So I'll give you that. But I do think we have to ask them. We have to know what the workforce might look like. And it may be that, you know, there are some who will retire early, I'm sure. There are some who will decide to do something different. But I know I also hear from a lot of teachers who are, we miss our kids. You see the banners on Facebook. We want to go back. We miss our kids. And so maybe the age of the teacher is, or the family circumstances or health, any number of those things impact our own individual and deeply personal decisions, which is why we're giving parents the option. Maybe teachers need the same option.
And maybe to your point, Ms. Rasmussen, things have changed because LCTA had a seat on the task force. And I didn't hear one time where they're represented. Look, guys, many of our members, they don't feel good. I don't care what recommendations. You can talk about masks. You can talk about shields. You can talk about disinfecting, sanitizing, that many of our members aren't there. Now, I don't know if Ms. McAllister can speak to it. This is the first inkling or we have heard about the vast majority of teachers don't feel good about coming back at all. Okay. And so I have not received that. I hadn't received that information. It wasn't shared with us in the task force. And I don't want to speak for Dina, but I don't know if she's had conversations with either Ms. Griffin or Mr. Mazur that said, look, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of teachers that do not want to return. Dina, you want to speak to it?
Yes, Superintendent. And thank you, School Board. We have been working consistently, as we shared, Ms. Gregory and I, when we reported to the task force. Ms. Gregory reported that we had been working the majority of the summer on Fridays, having conversations with LCTA members and teachers. And what we did learn was there are a lot of questions. What does this look like? What would be the expectations? How are you going to protect us? These have been consistent questions. The questions that the dialogue we've shared in has not been, we don't want to return, but we're nervous. How are you going to help us feel more comfortable? What happens if we're sent home? So there've been a cadre of discussion items, but nothing along the lines of we're too afraid to come back. That's never been our true focus. Our focus is on making sure we're hearing teachers, what they need for curriculum, what they need to feel safe. So that's been the majority. Teachers have not reached out to me other than those who feel as though they have underlying health issues that need to be addressed. Otherwise, I have not received an abundance of letters or notices from teachers that share, I'm afraid to come back, I don't feel safe, what are my options? We do have persons who have made decisions for personal reasons to either take a leave for various reasons, or they may have speeded up their retirement, but I can't always guarantee that those reasons are because of the pandemic. So as it relates to this survey, today was the first time that I saw the results of the survey. Ms. Griffin and the LCTA board has been most agreeable as it relates to sharing in conversations because we know we'll go higher together. And that's what we've done with the superintendent. So this survey, we were not a part of and didn't learn of it until after it was taken.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Bowen.
Thank you. When we started to discuss, I guess 15 minutes or so, when Attorney McKinley Williams told us of the number of people that had written to us, and we made a decision more or less that perhaps we were not going to read all of those responses because of the amount of time and that we'd already read them. I started to feel a little bit strange because our past practice had been to read our responses, or read those people, the messages from those individuals. And now tonight, we're not going to be doing that. And I know that it was important to them. And so in my mind, I'm kind of thinking, if we're not going to hear from those 137, then I would choose not to hear from that other group at this point. I mean, all of those folk are important to us. But I mean, it would kind of just sort of pull apart. We're listening to this group, but we're not listening to that group on, I almost said TV, in this meeting. So individually, could we not take a look at what LCTA has written, and we can read that as we are individually reading the comments from our citizens in the community? And the superintendent can then continue to survey all of the teachers as he, I think, was planning to do. So if I had to vote, I would vote to do just what I've just said. I don't know where we're going with this. And I think that for me would allay some of the angst that I've got, because we've been such an inviting group and having folk come to us and stand and speak, and they can just tell us off and look at us. And now they can only write us off and tell us off like that. Somebody can probably put that in more eloquent words, but in a feeling kind of way, I don't want to hear any of them if I have to hear one and not the other. Or I want to hear all of them because they all are important to us. And I say that very sincerely.
Madam Chair. Ms. Bowen, you always say everything very eloquently. I don't think anyone puts the words better than you do. So you said it very well when you said, I want to hear from everyone. I don't want to hear from one group. If we're going to hear a response, we want to make sure everyone's voice has an opportunity to be heard. So I would suggest, and again, we are still, there's no playbook. There is no playbook for how to run a school district during the pandemic. We're doing, in our district, God love everyone on the screen for doing the best they possibly can under these circumstances. And no one means to leave anyone out. And again, we're not making any decisions tonight because we can't. We have very little autonomy right now without the state telling us what we can and can't do. But we know things are changing. The state knows things are changing, and we'll see where this goes. So in the meantime, I would recommend that we issue a survey monkey, much like whatever LCTA put out to their members. It doesn't have to be long, but gauge the temperature so we know how our teachers feel. We know how our employees feel across the board, because on the flip side of that, I had a talk to a parent today. He said, please don't shut the schools. We need our kids to go back. My wife needs to go back to work. We can't educate them at home. So the numbers are coming in tonight. I'm sure Superintendent will share. We have over 14,000 responding that they want their kid to go back to brick and mortar. So as opposed to about 9,000 that want a digital learning academy. Superintendent, I'm seeing those numbers correctly, right? So we're at about 60% of our families that really want their kids to go back to school. They need their kids to go back to school. So Superintendent said it great. We are caught in a no-win situation here.
Right.
It is a no-win, but no decision is going to be made tonight. So, and if the teachers feel like they haven't been heard from, we apologize for that, and we want to hear from you.
Can I offer something?
Yes.
How about I will personally set aside 2 hours tomorrow, and I will have Chris set me up on Facebook Live, and I will read every single one of them. And you all feel free to jump in. Those of you that are retired, that may have a little more time than others, but I will have Chris Petley send something out tomorrow. And unless Miss McKinney-Williams has an issue with it, I will read every single one of them for 2 hours or however long it takes me tomorrow during the day, live on Facebook to our teachers. And if y'all would like to join me, feel free. And if I have to stay here until whenever at night to do it, we'll do it.
And that's great. And I think that's a wonderful idea. And I'd love to hear every word. And I know, again, we have been reading them all day today, reading. And the comments are very heartfelt, and we appreciate everyone taking time for it. But I think what I was asking for was to incorporate the entire pool of teachers, within LCTA, outside of LCTA, but our entire, if you are a Leon school teacher, we want to know how you feel about returning. We want to know in aggregate. So it's not so much about the letters, it's could we get out a survey monkey?
No, right. No, I don't want to even do a survey. I don't even want to do a survey monkey. Okay. Each principal is going to call each teacher and find out where they are. That's the only way to do this. I'm over the surveys. So each principal in school administration will call each teacher to find out where their people are. So those are their people. When I was principal at Leon, that was my team. Those were my guys. And so so I want by teacher for them to find out where their people are.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but I think the questions need to be consistent. So when we get feedback, we know that 40% of our people said this, 60. Yeah. We can't hear from each principal. Well, let me tell you about, she felt we would love to, but we need to know data. We need to look at the data and know what our teachers are feeling. So
just like we're doing with our students. We're getting feedback from 33,000 students. I can tell you to a student who wants to return to school and who wants Digital Academy.
So again, we ask them very defined questions. I think we need to be asking our teachers very defined questions. Now, if the principal wants to spend one-on-one and get more information from them, that's great too. But as feedback statistically for us, we need parameters. We need questions. Who answered what? We need to know in a statistical format for over 2,000 of them. I mean, this goes way beyond the letters.
Yes, I agree.
And that was my concern about the LCTA survey. And I wanted to know, did it include everyone?
Right. That's what we're asking for, is a survey for everyone.
Right. And what the responses were roughly 500. And that's the thing. So I'm happy to sit here all night, even if it's just me on this call, and read every single one, because I agree with you, Ms. Bowen. We've always let everybody come to the podium and yell at us and cry and it's important. That's a participatory democracy. However, if 137 teachers were motivated by the union to if it does, it's not a comprehensive picture of all of our teachers. 137 folks wrote in tonight. We need to be reading probably 2,000 letters from our teachers. And so going through the principals is the way to do it. I appreciate your offer, Mr. Superintendent. I think the problem with tomorrow is that we wouldn't be allowed to participate under the Sunshine Law. Right. Not a publicly noticed meeting. So if it means I have to be here all night tonight, I'm willing. I'm in. But
I'm confused by that. They can't listen. You can't listen.
We can listen. We can't.
Right.
We can't comment.
Exactly. So in your comments, Superintendent, you said that you were going to read, and any member who wanted to join you and read, I
didn't say read. I said listen. Listen. That way they are being heard. Look, I'm gonna do it anyway. So if y'all want to jump on, jump on. Or if you want to do it now, you can do it now.
Okay. I think we're getting a little bit sidetracked here. I'm really interested to hear the report from Dr. Cox and Mr. Superintendent about the reopening plan. And what I would just like to say is, I think this boils down to feeling safe. I think every teacher wants to come back and teach. Every student wants to come back wants to come back to school and learn. They want to see their friends. Our teachers want to hug their kids. I don't want the public to think in any way that somehow the teachers want to stay home and teach, but it's not about that. It's about safety. So what we have to focus on as a board and a school system is what is going to be a safe environment for people to learn and go to school in. And I'm sure that most of the people who said digital would prefer to send their kids back to school, but they don't feel safe. So that's what we have to focus on. Are there specific things that we can do? And I know that you all have been working on this for months, coming up with all kinds of things, temperature checks. And I'm sure Dr. Cox will go over those tonight. What are the protocols? People want to be real clear about the protocols. But there's some other things that maybe we can do. And that those were part of my questions for the end of the evening about, are we supplying teachers with, N95 masks so that they have two-way masks instead of one-way masks? Are we providing them microphones so that if they have to speak to a class, they could speak and be heard? Are there things we can do with the air systems that make the air systems safer? Are there things we can do to make sure that there's enough people at the schools to keep people socially distanced? And are there what things we talked about last night were maybe we need to look at a whole different paradigm and make sure we take care of the elementary school students because they're the most at risk, and parents need them taken care of the most. Can we look at a different school configuration? So I just don't want us to get too sidetracked on letters and so forth. I think what we're asking, one, is just to get a temperature check on the teachers in a survey that's consistent and has the same questions so that we know what percentage of our teachers feel that way. But I think more of them will feel better about coming back if we can focus on what we're going to do to try to make them feel safe, because that's the issue. And so I would prefer us to spend some time talking about that. And I know you have some plans for that, and then maybe we could add our own comments of what we think would additionally make people feel safe.
Thank you.
Great, ready to move. Madam Chair,
It's going.
this is gonna get me in trouble, but y'all can't throw anything at me now like you could if we were over at the other place. I was having a conversation with attorney today about the executive order, and she shared with me some words that helped to ease, I dare not say ease my fears, but it was pretty calming, I think, because this is a very hard thing that we're trying to do, and it's very serious. And she shared with me the first lines, I think, from, was it Commissioner Cochran's letter? That order. What were those first 4 words? Do you remember, Ms. McKinley-Williams?
It's the first words of section 1A. It says all schools open. And it's
okay. All schools open. Well, I was at home, and so I expressed myself with some other words that I can't use here. But every time I think about that, and I think about how we move to do that, I keep moving back to, but we have to do this right now. But we have to do this right now. And we're doing this because we've been mandated to do it. We're not doing this because we really want to. And we are as scared, as frightened as many of our parents are, and as many of our teachers are, and certainly as many of our students are. And we want our children to be in school or to be at home studying as much as they do. So I have used those words to kind of keep me as grounded, level, and balanced as I can as I listen to everybody to make the decisions that we have to make. Right now, the schools will be open. I just needed to put that out there. I'm ready to move.
Well, if we're going to read the order, I'm going to read the other sentence. It says,
okay.
School boards and charter school governing boards must open brick and mortar schools in August at least 5 days per week for all students, subject to the advice and orders of the Florida Department of Health. So it's,
Yep, that's fair.
The caveat is written in the commissioner's order that it's really up to the Florida Department of Health in the end to decide if things are safe. And then we have the option, of course, to offer in-person learning or digital learning. I'm just going to read, I did it last time, I'm going to do it one more time, and then I think I'd really like to hear the superintendent's report. The Florida Department of Health, the first sentence on their website says, residents advised to wear masks in public and socially distance, avoid crowds, closed spaces, and close contact. That is the definition of a public school classroom.
That is open. That is right.
The Department of Health is saying that. And that is in contradiction to the situation we have of crowded classrooms, crowded hallways, crowds. It says don't be in crowds. And if you're in a crowd, you have to stay 6 feet away and you have to have a mask on. So we're living a contradiction of trying to do something that the Department of Health says really isn't very safe based on their definition and based on the CDC's definition. So, we have to get creative here and do the best we can for our children. I know every single person is trying to do that.
Right.
But, the situation is changing by the day, and we had 15,000 new cases in Florida on Sunday. And so that's why you see so much fear out there, I think, and for good reason. So,
6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. We're up against a rock and a hard place. Where do we go and how do we get there? I'm ready to.
Well, again, I'd like to hear the
Chair, yeah, I'd like to hear the superintendent because of
Me too.
I'd like to hear the superintendent and his operational plan moving forward, at which.
All right, good. Me too.
All right, we're going there now. Mr. Jones, just so you're aware, there's a little bit of a drag on your audio that makes you sound a little distorted, and I know you're far too articulate to want that. So we're going to move to the superintendent and report. Thank you.
Okay, guys, let me go back to June the 1st. After the graduation ceremonies were over on June the 1st, pulled our team together. We dissected our school district into many different parts, starting with health and safety with Dr. Cox, academic services with Jillian, early childhood, transportation, food service, exceptional student education, and those subgroups started meeting and having meetings with other people in the community. We convened a task force for 3 days. The subgroups presented to the task force. The task force thought about it over the weekend and then gave additional thoughts, additional comments, and we presented a plan. We presented a plan to you, and we presented a plan to the community. I was at Gilchrist on Facebook talking about the pediatric assessments, talking about what it would look like in a cafeteria, how we were social distancing our desks as much as possible in classrooms, the requirement of students and employees to wear masks on buses, in transitions, and in the classrooms, with us looking at creative ways to come up with mask breaks. We also talked about hygiene kits and all the tools and things that teachers would have and our schools would have at their disposal. There have been discussions about air conditioning, filtering systems. There have been discussions of many things. We have talked and we have discussed the plan. We talked about masks. We've talked about many things. Now tonight, I honestly was not prepared to start over and go through all of that again. I will, and Dr. Koch can start at the beginning and we can go through every single thing that we said 2 weeks ago. I thought tonight I was going to give you an update on what the surveys from our parents, not surveys not even a good word, what the intent forms were looking like, how they were trending. Dr. Cox will give an update from the Department of Health on contact tracing, which has proven to be quite a bear, especially here recently. So I'm not sure if we want to start over again and start from the beginning, or if we just want to give an update on where we are post sending out our plan to today. So let me start with an update on the numbers, and Ms. Strickland, you alluded to it. Just a few minutes ago, I was sent an update. We have over 24,000, nearly 25,000 responses as our principals are making calls. A number of our schools that are over 100%, they know each and every student, what their intentions are, and do they have internet connectivity. First, some good news. Let's get some good news first. How about that? So we have found that the vast majority of our families, the students and families that want Digital Academy have access, reliable access to the internet. Of the nearly, 9,000 students and families, around 200 said they're going to need some help. That's positive. That's very positive, okay? So of the 24,000, nearly 25,000 responses, 14,868 families and students would like to return. And by order of the governor and the Commissioner of Education, they have a right to return to brick and mortar face-to-face instruction, right? Almost 15,000. 9,276, or about 9,500 when you add in another category with virtual school. So about 9,500 or 40% of our families, however, given the choice that we're giving them, don't feel good. They just aren't there for whatever reason. And they are asking that we, through our digital academies and distance learning, educate them at home. So we're trending right now at about 60-40. Ironically, our Title I schools are not trending 60-40. They are more 50-50. Or in some cases, we have more students in some of our Title I schools who are leaning in families towards digital academies than they are towards face-to-face brick and mortar, which I never would have expected that. And then some of our other schools that are non-Title I schools are just the opposite. They're in the 20s, 20 to 30% of those students would want digital academy, but 70% or more are wanting and expecting to return to a classroom with a teacher on August the 19th. Those are where the numbers are. We spent a lot of time today. I convened a staff meeting to talk about staffing, and Roseanne mentioned this before. Master schedules are a bear, and so we are devising 2 master schedules. One for kids that are in our school, unless things change between now and August 19th, that are in our schools, and then one for students, the 9,500 kids that are at home. The classroom is going to be at home. And the FDLE calls it innovative learning. And we have to submit an innovative learning plan to the department by the end of the month to be approved, or we will not receive funding for those 9,500 students, which would bankrupt our school system. It would cripple us. And so we have, like Jillian says, plans upon plans upon plans. We incorporated and went to the block scheduling that I talked to you about yesterday to limit the transitions and limit the amount of contact. We do think that by moving kids into digital academy with those 9,500, remember I talked to y'all yesterday, it's not just as easy as saying, well, let's move into our high schools. Let's move the high schools into one. Let's move Leon kids and Lincoln kids up into Childs, and then use Leon and Lincoln for elementary classrooms. The problem is elementary school teacher Jones has 22 kids in her class. Now, if we split the class in 11 maybe, or at Kate Sullivan, we move 11 to Leon, now we need another Miss Jones. Now we have to hire another teacher in order to accomplish that. But if we have these kids going into digital academies, and it's been proven that teachers in digital academies or distance learning can accommodate more students because they aren't dealing with the exact seat time. They aren't dealing with bell schedules. They aren't dealing with discipline issues in the class. And so it's been proven that teachers in a blended model are able to accommodate more students. And if that's the case, then maybe Ms. Jones' class in brick and mortar is not 22 anymore. It's 16 or 17. And now that social distancing and that spreading of the desk gets even further. We get a lot closer to our 6 feet, right? Unfortunately, I'm not so sure that really matters to the teachers that we're hearing from. They're scared whether we get to that 6 feet or not. I have a sneaky suspicion that that's the case, because we talked about the mask. And remember, one of the things you saw about the mask that we have on the posters that we're doing, we know that if I have a mask on and you have a mask on, if a teacher has a mask on and a student has a mask on, that transmission rate probability is very low. It's less than 1%. Dr. Koch, you correct me in a minute when you get on if I'm wrong. But it's extreme, as my glasses fog up. But it's extremely low when both people have masks on, right? And so that was the goal. And that's why we were requiring masks in classrooms for our students and our teachers. Now, if we have students that can't do that, and we can't get that accomplished, then they're going to need to flip into the digital academy, right? And we will also talk about coming up with creative mask breaks and things like that. So I think our teachers have heard our reopening plan. They heard from the task force. We talked it with you. We've been on Facebook Live with our parents. We've rolled out the plan. I've given an update now on the numbers, on what the trend is. It's about 60-40, okay, as of 8 o'clock on the 14th. And we've heard from probably 70% of our parents and families. We'll be at 100% at all schools by the end of the week. That's where we are in numbers. Now I'm going to let Dr. Cox then give an update on where we are with the health department and employees and contact tracing. And then Jillian can jump in on academic services, and then we'll take some questions from there. All right, Dr. Cox.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Ms. Rasmussen, don't see your picture right now, but for clarification, I've got questions from Ms. Wood and Ms. Bowen. Am I including that now? Because I was like, Rocky, I did not know I was doing. I mean, I can do a formal presentation again if I need to.
Include it now,
give me
please.
direction what to do there.
Yeah, Alan, go ahead. Yeah, I would just include the questions in your. So you're giving an update that includes these questions, basically.
Yes.
So if you're okay with it, I'm going to go through Ms. Wood's question and Ms. Bowen's questions, and it includes the update. It's embedded in it, if that's okay with everybody.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, so these are questions that we get, and then we have a couple of frequently asked ones that I've been sharing with the community, with the principals, and like today I met with all the charter school folks, you know, and so I have kind of an abbreviated version. I go with them, but so these are some of the questions we've gotten from Ms. Wood. These were yours. Under what circumstances will mask exceptions be made for our youngest children? What age? And for those who with documented special needs? That's also on our frequent FAQs, the frequently asked questions part of the plan. Just as a reminder to everybody that's listening, to go to Leon County School homepage, you'll see that it has reopening plans will pop up. Click on that, and the first one up there will be the health and safety one. The way it is a fluid document because things are changing so quickly, and the way it's laid out right now is it has a narrative, and then it has FAQs. And that's not just behind health services, it's also behind safety, which is John Hunkier, transportation, food services, maintenance, athletics, co-curricular activities. That's how it's all laid out. Just FYI on that. Okay, so what about our children? Okay, if they're 3 years of age or older, masks are required. And we have their daycares all over town that have been successful with this age. So our pre-K, 3 years old, 4-year-olds, and up. Now, we don't put masks on 2 years and below that. What about those documented special needs? If it's an exceptional student, then the IEP team will help drive that decision and the accommodation that we need. If it's just a regular education student and they have medical needs, they cannot wear a mask. That's tied to a a health plan. This is not new. We've had health plans and parents that are aware of that in our schools with our diabetic students, all the other compromised health situations. It's signed by a health professional. Opal McKinney, which I've worked closely with her on a lot of these things, and she'll tell you that you cannot make a broadcast statement and put all these children into one lump. They are definitely individual. So that answers that. Will teachers who serve students who cannot safely wear masks be supplied with two-way protective mask and visors? Okay. At the hard work of Dr. Gale, we have, I think, almost 400,000 masks, cloth masks, which is CDC okayed those, for our students and our staff. Yes, at Gretchen, as an example, Gretchen Everhart School, we will be supplying for those teachers a visor, a face shield on top that you need to wear a mask with it. Now, you got to be careful about this because the face shields by themselves are not enough. The aerosol spray that comes from coughing or sneezing goes over it, around it, or under it. So you still have to wear a mask in conjunction with that. And there's all kind of products coming out there that claim a lot of things. That's why I stay with our local Department of Health. All right, so that's so yes, we will be providing extra PPE for those situations. All right, a question that Ms. Wood asked, will amplification systems be provided to teachers so they can be clearly heard and understood through a mask? I have not pursued that at this time. Secondary teachers can say.
Let me weigh in on that. So I had a conversation with Bill Nemens and some of our folks. A number of our teachers, we installed amplification systems. A number of them have them already. The problem is we did a lot of installations and teachers didn't use them, so we wasted a lot of money. Moving forward, though, we think we can get some devices if teachers so desires. We can help get some of those devices to help with teachers if they want that system. What I don't want to do is give everybody one, because a lot of times they don't use them. But also a number of our teachers already have that capability, and for the ones that don't, that would need it or would like it, then we will certainly do our best to find something to help them project.
Can you add that to the survey? I mean, we need to know how many we need, right? And I think that's going to be a critical thing for teachers, is that if they have to wear a mask all day, to have an amplification system.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. I knew we had the intelligent classrooms, which included amplification systems. I knew at one time we were tempted to have that everywhere. Will parents and students be required to sign an agreement that they understand and will commit to following the COVID-related rules? And if not, they will enroll their child in a home-based virtual option. Okay, we are going to add this just like we did our internet usage agreement. We'll put it in the code of conduct. I'll be working with Dr. Rogers on a discipline policy. Now, as we sit today, and as I mentioned, this document is flexible, changing, because I'm going to be adding several things to it. We will counsel a child and we will talk to the parent. And then if that doesn't about their child, then they're using a mask. And many of our principals have already told me that they're working with their children now, especially those that have a hard time leaving a mask on for whatever reason, is that start working with your child now on keeping their hands off their face. That's one of the biggest things. So let's start that process now. All right, so to answer that question, we're going to add it to the code of conduct book, and we will be going down the line with what's our next move if the counseling and talking to the parents not enough.
Alan, can I say something?
Yes.
That's just another concern I've heard a lot from teachers is, they have a hard time getting them to keep their cell phones in their pockets. I mean, anybody who's dealt, especially with secondary students, knows that it's, becomes almost a policing matter to constantly be reminding kids of the rules, and when they go out in the halls and taking off their mask and all that sort of. And that's, again, one of those fears I think that teachers have, is that we can say all day that everybody's going to wear a mask all day, but that's a really hard thing to enforce. And so that's one of those fear pockets. And again, if teachers if they'll wear them, two-way masks, then they'll be protected if the kid does take off their mask. Then we really, we need to protect our teachers, number one. So.
Right, I hear you. All right, some more questions from Ms. Wood here, and then I'll get to Ms. Bowen. Social distancing and classroom COVID capacity. It's been a chicken and the egg kind of situation, because we can social distance more for a certain amount of students, go digital academy, right? But a lot of times the parents want to make that decision beforehand. They want to know, are you going to be able to social distance? So it's kind of like, we're waiting on this information to give you more information about the next thing. But once schools know their enrollment numbers, can the school board and the public be provided with class size and physical distancing capacity by school? Yes. So we just got the numbers today. Now we plow into the numbers, right? Now, so we got the percentages. We kind of know, well, the typical class of 25, maybe only 15 will be in there. And as the superintendent already mentioned, that can help increase the social distancing as well. I broadcast from 3 different schools on Facebook Live, and all 3 of them had those classes set up in social distancing. They were able to get 6 feet between them, the 3 different places that I was in. So hopefully now, with a certain percentage of our students with doing the digital academies, it even opened up more space. For a fact, it helps in transition in the hallways. It helps with before school, after school, and with feeding the students too. Recognizing that students.
Wait. I have a question about that. I'm sorry, but these are my questions, so I need to.
Yeah, I hear you.
I know how it is as a principal when you have set up a class for 16 kids and you've got it all set up and you got everybody 4 feet apart. And then that one kid walks in the door and you need a place to put them. And then the principal goes to the teacher and says, would you just take one more? Would you just take one more? So I want us to have some sort of hard, fast rules that once we say this is how many kids are going to go in this room to keep it safe, that we are going to have something in place for that child to go somewhere else, or that there's another teacher added, or I don't know, that's the hard part. I know that's the hard part, but I don't want parents to think, well, okay, my kid's fine because they've got, 6 feet apart in their classroom. And then before you know it, it's changed because 5 kids just came in the door and they want to add in, and where do you put them? So, you can't answer that right this second, but I think we need to have a pretty hard, fast rule about that, again, to alleviate teachers' fears about that.
Right. And I hear you. And as a former high school principal like you, there's a lot of ways that can be handled, right? And scheduling, looking at other classes, limiting what offerings you have when the classes get to that point. And we will involve our high school principals in that as well.
Well, it's elementary too, I'm sure. You get one more kid in the door and you don't have another teacher for that. So we need a plan for that, I think.
Okay. Let's see. Recognizing that students and teachers will need to take mask breaks. What are the plans for classrooms that don't have enough space to physically distance safety? Okay, so it was my recommendation that we work in mask breaks, even if they can keep the 6 feet. They're going to need to take those things down for a little bit every so often. So a lot of folks they look around in their classroom and they said, okay, where can I put a mask-free zone? How can I move students to that area for a little while? Don't forget about outside either. I've quoted some research about getting students up and moving every 20 minutes, and they certainly can stand the students up, keep social distance, and move them around outside. It's not, go down the hallways, walk around the playground. They need to be creative in the schools. I've heard from some principals that are, but even if we had the social distancing, 7 hours with the mask on, then, of course they have lunch and things, but they just need to be creative with mask breaks. I think that's a noble thing that we need to look at in the schools there. I'm going to go by the one part here. One question you asked is about, Ms. Wood, is are block schedules to reduce student movement and cohort containment being considered at the secondary level? Superintendent's already addressed that, so we'll go to the block scheduling, which limits the transitions to 2. Remember, to mitigate the spread of COVID, there's 3 things mainly. One is the social distancing, or what the previous CDC director called physical distancing. The other one is the cohort groups, which the movement to the block scheduling at secondary has done. Of course, elementary, so it's a lot easier task to accomplish. And the other one is the mask. Both parties wearing the mask. So I think we've accomplished that. If it's okay, and we can certainly come back if you need more explanation, I'd like to go to Ms. Bowens, because it's going to get at the one part that I wanted to update everybody on, okay? Is that okay? Move forward? Yeah. Okay. So please have someone speak to address safety in all areas of the system, such as testing, tracing, and social distancing. Okay. So the protocol, what's our protocol if we have a sick employee or a sick student? And this is in the plan, but it's not in a graphic layout. And I will add that. I have training videos that we're going to be plugging in here in the next week, showing how we teach about the use of the hygiene kit and the daily health screenings that are huge with every student. And we have a graphic, a graphic that shows how we contact trace. I've been working on that with staff today that we'll be plowing in there. Right now, it's just in a narrative base. So here's how it works. This came straight from our local Department of Health. And this is what they have been doing all summer. This is contact tracing. Here's how it works. If an employee tests positive for COVID, he then notifies his supervisor. The supervisor then starts an investigation. The supervisor can be James Howcroft, Food Services. It could be me. It could be the principal. It's whoever supervises that person. They simply ask the person that tested positive, who have you been around for more than 15 minutes with no mask and less than 6 feet? And in the last 72 hours, 15 minutes or longer, less than 6 feet with no mask. All right, once they identify that, they then they tell the investigator or the supervisor, everybody that broke that rule, and they get their number, their phone number. They then call me or my office or Dina McAllister. So Dina's involved, Terry Anderson, who's the health services director, and me. We give that to the Department of Health. This is what they do. This is what they've been doing. So we give it to the Department of Health. They then do the contact tracing. They call all those people and they give them their directions. And it's either quarantine for 14 days or it's they go get tested. And now that we have an MOU that y'all just approved, we can get a rapid test. They don't have to miss so much work. But once somebody reports that they're going to get tested for COVID, they got to, until they get the results back, they can't come back. That's our contact tracing right now. For right now, that's exactly how we would do it with students. That's how we did it with a couple of volleyball players and the football players and a couple of folks, the reason we canceled the summer workouts. And that's how we would do it with students today. And that's the contact tracing. So the supervisor interviews the person that tested positive, then makes a list of everybody that failed those 3 measures, gives the list to me, I give it to the Department of Health. That's how that works. Go ahead.
So in a scenario when, let's just say a teenager goes out and kisses somebody behind the building, they don't want anybody to know about it. You know, I'm just thinking of all the ways that people don't really tell who they've been with without a mask. So, you know, and then that person goes to the classroom, the teacher has no idea. That's one of my big concerns is,
right.
And you really authentically with high school kids particularly really know when they go off to lunch together and do whatever they do.
I mean, so then everybody needs to, if you break the 6 feet, they need to wear a mask. That's all I can say with that. I mean, what else? I mean, we only know what we're told.
I know you can't answer that. I
don't have an answer for that. I mean,
no, I know you don't. It's just the truth.
That's why we want, if you break the 6 feet, everybody wears a mask. I need to, there is something new, and that's why I've always said this document's got to be flexible. And I told the task force, it has to be dynamic. We have to add stuff. There's something called household protocol. And I wish we were in front of each other because sometimes it's easily lose this in translation on these Zoom meetings.
I know.
This is if somebody in the house has it, okay? So my son Lee, for example, he and I live together, and Lee has COVID-19. It's a continuous contact. So right now, I cannot come back to work until 14 days after he is cleared. So once the health department does a letter of release or the doctor clears him, 14 days, I can come back. We have that in a handful of situations around our district right now. We have one where I have a family of 3 and there's an employee. But that actually, since they all have it at the same time, is actually kind of a good thing because they'll all end at the same time. Where it's bad is if one child gets it and another one doesn't get it for another 2 weeks, see, it keeps pushing that employee out. The reason I wanted to tell you about the household protocols, I get a lot of questions about what if my son or my spouse gets it and I work for y'all. So this is household protocol, came from the Department of Health, and then there's just the regular protocol. On the household protocol, you're about to be signed out. That's what my computer's telling me. I wonder why. Okay. All right. On the household protocol, there's a way around it, and that's if the family member, let's say that's an employee, can simply move away from the person that's infected. And there's a million things that are bad about that. But we have a case in our district now where the spouse actually went to live with a sister. Once they do that, then it's back to regular protocol. After 3 days, get tested, can come back to work. But you have to separate them, because if they're around somebody that's infected, you have to wait 14 days after that person's cleared. So that's household protocol. But for right now, the contact tracing that the health department with the RNs have been doing all since March, and these are the RNs that work for us, they're coming back to us. Once the school year starts, I think it's about 8 of them will be coming back to us to work in our schools. That's how it works. Who have you been at? They interview, who have you been around more than 15 minutes, less than 6 feet with no mask? Those are suspect of being exposed, and then they'll give them direction, and usually the direction is 14 days quarantine or go get tested. And if they're an employee, we have a testing site that we can get them back right away. And those are the folks that actually do. So we have to do the initial investigation. We know the people, but that answers that. What monitoring steps are in place to ensure sanitizing and disinfecting is done system-wide? Okay, we have a strike force. Rod McQueen is over this. The minute I am notified that we have a COVID case somewhere, I send the strike force out and they deep clean the area. So that's how that works. Let's see, what other stuff? What ongoing protocols are listed on the website so parents can feel proper steps are being taken? This sickness protocol that I just went over, it's on the website right now. The problem is it's kind of in a narrative, and I'm going to put that in more of a graphic format. But in the next couple of days, you'll see it. And it's a flow chart. It has like an arrow pointing to the next thing, pointing to the next thing. So we'll have that. We've already got that under development. So I wanted to go over the contact tracing. That's how we handle sick students or sick employees, and then answer those questions.
Can you go back to my question then on what is the plan for coverage when teachers get sent home or get sick?
So we have, subs like always. Subs, as you know, can be, sometimes it's a challenge to get them and everything. If we ever had a situation where we didn't have somebody to cover classes, we can't leave kids unsupervised. So we could double classes. We don't ever want to do that. To do that, we have to do that in the cafeteria, the center of the auditorium. We have to do it in a place that, where we can spread them out. As far as staffing, I'd have to turn to Dina McAllister on some of those HR questions. Trying to find where that was.
Dr. Cox, while you're looking, I just wanted to reiterate, and I appreciate you using the graphic. I think all these different questions will inform our teachers about how and if they're going to feel safer. Like, what happens if a kid in my class has an outbreak? What do I go home? Do I have to be back? Do I get a sub? Do I get sick leave? Those are all contributing to the fear that I think our teachers and perhaps our parents too are having. And we've got to have a graphic that shows or tries to anticipate all these different eventualities, or some sort of way to.
Yeah, I'm working, Ms. Rasmussen, I'm working on it the best I can. I know. I got to tell you right now that I get asked for a number all the time, and I can't give that, okay? And nor would I really want to, but I have been, I've met with the Department of Health. They live in my office every day. And an example, people say, well, how many students in my child's class until you cancel the class, send the class home? And I said, we will do contact tracing. I explained to whoever asked me that, just what I went over with y'all. And then we may find out that, hey, there's 2 students that got it, but they got it at a party, okay? And that nobody else met the exposure guidelines in that class. And so for me to say 2 students, but when really we don't need to send them home in that case. That's why it's difficult to do that. I get asked quite often about percentages. What percentage of a school will need to be infected? Well, 5, 10, 15, 20%. Gilchrist Elementary, 5% is 50 students. I mean, that's a lot of students, but maybe they're spread out through different grade levels. So in my communications with number 2 at the Department of Health today, they said, Alan, what we'll do is we'll contact trace it. It may be a hallway. It may be a segment of rooms. It may be one room. You know, it may be a grade level. So see, it's independent. So I understand people's wanting, people wanting to know definite numbers, but it is not, you cannot do it that way. And you have to look at every case. You chase down every case like I did this weekend with our athletes, some of the athletes. You got to chase every one of them down and look at every situation for what it is. And, and also have to be cognizant of the changes that are coming. But but I hear you. So I will work on trying to put this in more of a understandable format, but I will not be plugging numbers into anything. They could just all be so different. Yeah.
But I think even if you had what we talked about earlier today, what was a single incident versus exposure for 15 minutes so it could be low, moderate, high. What are the scenarios that happen? And I know low, moderate, and high are not quantifiable. That's so subjective. It's not acceptable even to me. It's not acceptable to our teachers. It's not acceptable to the public. But I understand that you're doing the very best you can. And the Department of Health is driving this, and we have legal liability and risk management issues to consider. So right. Given all of that, can we just do the best we can to try to anticipate all these eventualities that might help to allay the concerns of our teachers and our parents?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just back to the question about coverage. I know last year in a good year, we have trouble getting subs. And now combining classes is even more, risky. There's only one cafeteria. So, and if one person's off because they had to be off for 3 days and one person's off because they have to be 14 days, I mean, that's, again, just my concern is, do we have the staff power to handle this if the number of teachers get sent home, or, and if they have a 3-day and their child has it so they can't go, and it can multiply very fast to have proper coverage at the schools. And I do want to hear what we're doing to try to recruit and train lots more subs.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
As it relates to subs, this is Deana McAllister. As it relates to subs, we have 445 active subs in Leon County as we are speaking right now. We will begin advertising to hire new subs with protocols in place to train the subs, and will designate a specific group of subs to cover certain school sites. So there won't ever be just a random call made for coverage. There'll be a select group of at least 10 individuals designated per school site. That is our goal, so that we can make sure we can cover those absences. Now, for the extended period of time, we'll have to continue to work through that issue. But what our goal is to make sure that we have at least a designated amount of subs, 10 at least at each school site, with the assistance and support of getting those names of persons who are on the preferred list, to create a list for each school site, so that those individuals understand the safety protocols for the school, they're familiar with the students and the leadership of the school and the way of work during the pandemic time. So Mr. Brett Shively is leading us with that venture, and Mrs. Melanie Garrison, who supervises the applicant section of HR, is also working closely with principals.
Have you surveyed those subs to see if they're willing to come?
We're in the process of, we just sent a survey out to them now, seeing if they're willing to serve and work with us for the fall 2020.
Thank you.
And I would say, I don't know if it's okay that that's a separate survey than the one that the superintendent has agreed to send to the current teacher population, but also in thinking about in the event that we don't go to brick and mortar, or we have some reduced version of brick and mortar and repurposing other folks who have different job descriptions that might be utilized for this. I would just add that to the mix.
Okay. There were some additional questions placed by Ms. Wood as it relates to personnel staffing accommodations. Ms. Wood, would you like me to address those at this time?
Please.
Okay. Your first question posed to my office was, what percentage of teaching force is over 65 and or have asked for accommodations due to the underlying health issues? I can say to you right now that we have 42 teachers in Leon County that are 65 and older. We have 17 on the cusp. So they'll be 65 within the next year. Okay. So those are the numbers as they stand now. I have in my office currently about 25 individuals who have submitted some type of email or correspondence to my office asking for accommodations, whether they're teachers or support staff. Okay. And so we'll have to vet those. And working with Alan Cox, we have to take every situation as it is. Every case is individual. What we're going to do is require individuals to have paperwork completed, ADA paperwork completed by their physician to see what accommodations can be made. The hard part of this is we're not a business. We're not a traditional business. Like my sister can work from home for weeks and never have to go into the office because she's more office. She creates her office where she is. Teaching is a whole totally different spectrum. You cannot work from home when you're a custodian. You cannot work from home when you're a bus driver. You cannot work from home when you're a teacher. Depending on your working specifications. So we'll have to look at these individuals and vet them accordingly. Pam Faulkner is on the line and can address, which is the Families First COVID leave. Pam.
Good evening. So on March the 18th, a new law came into effect called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And what they did is they provided 2 weeks of paid leave for our employees if they are unable to work or telework. But it's all related to COVID. So basically, if someone has symptoms and they're being tested, trying to get a medical diagnosis, if they've been quarantined by their healthcare provider, if they are caring for someone who's been quarantined, or if they have been quarantined by the government, they are entitled to this 2 weeks of paid sick leave. The caveat to it is that it is only 2 weeks from April 1st through December 31st. So it's a one-time thing. So we have about 66 employees who have already applied and used their leave. So now if something happens that they, have to be tested and have to be out for a period of time, they don't get another 2 weeks.
So our policy is that if we send someone home because they have to be quarantined for one reason or another, and they've used their 2 weeks up until December 31st, then they will be using their own sick leave.
That's correct.
And once that sick leave is used, are there other?
Well, we have the policy in place where employees can transfer sick leave to each other. So that would certainly be an option. If they have a coworker or even, someone from another school that is willing and able to transfer sick leave to them, we can certainly do that too.
If I may add, thank you, Pam. It's really important because Pam has been vetting these cases with us all. I want to make sure quite a few individuals in our district did take the Families First and use the 2 weeks. But for those instances that Alan Cox and I have vetted over the weekend, they had not yet utilized their 2 weeks. So it is coming in handy. If you go on quarantine or you're isolated until you receive the results of your COVID test, if it's negative, then you can go back to work and you haven't utilized all that leave. So if something else comes down the pike a couple of weeks later and you need to use a portion of that again for whatever reason, you'll have that.
I want to derail this conversation, but I think one thing that we need to be mindful of is the likelihood that workers' comp could be a significant fiscal impact on our budget if workers can show that they contracted this as a part of their job, as part of their doing their official duties.
And Mrs. Banks, thank you, Ms. Rasmussen. Today, Dr. Cox and I met with Mr. Todd Stupski, who is our risk management director. And so we're vetting these closely and working with him. And he will also serve as our point person as we direct individuals to go get tested. So then he can help us manage what this looks like so that we make sure that we are trying to control the number of instances that this may occur.
Yeah,
So
you
what-
point, Ms. Rasmussen. So when we met on Monday, we have a process in place where we're merging in risk management to all of this, and then trying to use the COVID leave, and then also, you know, being very aware of if we are making people quarantine or we are things beyond their control, if they were exposed to someone. I mean, we're, you know, one of the few perks our employees have when they leave this profession is to be paid out for their leave, to be paid out for their sick leave. Mm-hmm. And so we, as much as we possibly can, want to try to hold them harmless, especially if it's things that they cannot control.
I'm very glad to hear you say that, because that's another, you know, big concern of teachers getting sent home all the time because one of their kids has COVID and then they use up all their sick leave, and I don't think that's fair.
I hear you, and I hear you, and I agree with you, and we're going to work to do everything we can to be accommodating.
Well, keep in mind too, if they can telework, they don't have to use the COVID leave. So it may be a situation where they're asymptomatic, you know, and they can still maybe work from home. That's an option also.
Ms. Faulkner, we don't currently have a telecommuting policy. So I think that is something that we need to work on.
I agree with
I
that.
think Mr. Jones wants to speak. His sound is not quite right, but.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm. That's better.
The superintendent's point is well made. I'm just concerned as we look at these possible scenarios relative to our teachers and their possible contraction or infection or exposure. I think that the district needs, either through policy change driven by the board and the superintendent. I think there's a word that the superintendent is correct, that we would leave our staff blameless. And I don't think that that we should. I think if we're talking about creating an environment that is comfortable for our teachers, that they might be less fearful. I think we need to make certain that we follow the word that he has used, and that is blameless. And so subsequently policy should perhaps direct the same, so that regardless of what number of times or what number of incidences, if it is that and it is subsequently job related, then we make whatever provisions necessary that are by no means punitive for something beyond their own control. No different than no one is penalized when we have a natural disaster.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Right, I hear you. I hear all of you, and I am in total agreement. But I don't want to make a promise I can't keep. So let me get back with Pam and with Dina and Kim, and we'll give you more information about leave and some of those issues when we get together next week. Is that okay?
Well, and I don't know, and Pam, maybe you know this, does the CARES Act or the governor's, I mean, clearly the federal government and now the state government have taken executive privilege to institute emergency rules. Would we have the ability to do that for ourselves under some parameter that they may or may not have set? And you don't have to answer that right now. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just want you to put all this.
Okay. I can look into that. The only one that I know that affects paid leave for employees is this Families First Coronavirus Response Act, but I can certainly look into that further.
But also know too, that's on our dime. It wasn't like they gave the act, but we're paying for the leave. They didn't send money with the act. You know, we are paying for this leave time anyway. So let us dig a little deeper and get back to you the next week. But we all have the same goal in mind.
And to Mr. Superintendent, we have a sick leave bank that has a committee that you have to go before in order to dip into that. Maybe that's a model under this unusual emergency that could be considered for the telecommuting circumstances also.
Could I go back to something Ms. McAllister said? Dean, I believe you said that how many teachers so far have, and I'm just focusing on teachers right now, have asked for accommodation due to health issues?
Well, what I did, Ms. Wood, I did put them all together. So it's about, I would say it's almost about, the majority of the people, it's about 25 people.
Okay, so
not more, and it comes in every day.
So I just want to make sure people are aware of what the process is, because
and that's, we have to, but I want to be careful because we have to streamline this, because if a person does request this, that means we have to give them an alternative position or assignment. Based on our numbers or need for the district, that's when this would occur. So I need to allow the superintendent and district leadership to vet the number of persons we'll have at each school site, what those responsibilities are, where our needs are. Then we can look to see if there are alternative places where we can suggest or recommend for persons who have designated sicknesses that would count offering this opportunity.
No,
so I want to be careful because we have to vet that.
It can't be Pandora's box. I understand that, but I just want it to be clear so that people, everyone knows what the process is.
Sure. So the first step would be to reach out to me via email, and then I am requiring them to complete paperwork that support staff will then send to them to be completed by their doctor. And again, after that process takes place, I'll vet and work with the attorneys of the district to make sure that we can meet these accommodations or cannot meet these accommodations, or to look at alternative or repurposing individuals based on the needs of the district.
Okay, thank you. That's fair.
Please, I have the complete confidence. I mean, you're like Superwoman. I don't know how you do it, but so I have a ton of respect and confidence in your ability. So please don't take this the wrong way, but I'm just wondering if the finance officers across every district finance officer, they have a finance council, and there are other groups like that where every school district, do you have that kind of,
we do it through yes, we do it through FAN, we do it through HR networks. Yes, we do.
Okay.
We do. And we're on the phone constantly.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. Yeah. Like, we shouldn't all be reinventing the same wheel if we could get.
No. The biggest concern for districts across the state, really across, because I have people in Atlanta, just all over the nation, is this whole concept of people who have been designated as high risk. And we have some people who are high risk that are severely high risk on a different level based on diagnosis or whatever. Then we have some people who are high risk who are intermittent. Like, they just want, just for the good of the order, just want to let you know I struggle with this. But we're going to have to go through to see that the individuals who are deemed this, can they not perform the essential functions of their job in a traditional setting? And if not, what accommodations the doctor is requiring them, and if the district can meet those requirements based on their title designation, job designation.
Well, are there often opportunities for a designee to work at home depending on what the doctor's designation is, or is that?
Well, I want to be just like, I think it was, I don't know, I think that was Ms. Wood who just said Pandora's box. I want to be very careful, because when you let one, you have to let all. So we have to be careful about what that looks like, because everyone at this point would like to work, or the majority of people would like to be able to work from home. So I don't want to just say, yes, definitely. What I want to do is vet that again based on documentation.
Okay.
And I think there was one more question, Ms. Wood, as you requested information as it relates to, are we going to be hiring staff to support schools? I just want to understanding your question.
Right, and I've gotten some good news from Alan Cox the other day on the phone. I don't think he shared that yet, but about what, you go ahead and say what you were going to say.
You know what I was going to say? I was going to share Dr. Cox's information as it relates to offering support to schools as a result, of health aides. But what we don't want to do is we're going to be lifting our hiring freeze in the next day or so, where schools will be able to advertise the needs that they have. But we, again, for the good of the order, I want to make sure that we're clear that because of our numbers and what we're so uncertain right now, we want to be careful about what we're advertising, who we're hiring, to make sure that we're not overdoing that based on the numbers that'll be in brick and mortar if we come back, or if we're virtual, or whatever the case may be. There'll be opportunities should the need present itself for us to allow schools based on their FTE staffing plans to hire.
Okay. Dr. Cox, I think. Were you going to share that news you gave me?
About the health monitors? Was that?
Yeah, I thought we got an extra grant for something.
Oh, yeah. So in the working in conjunction with the Department of Health wrote a grant. I was kind of surprised we got it because it's pretty competitive, but so we're going to be able to hire for the first semester folks to help out with the all the situation involving COVID, the health screenings. It's one person per school, and if a child does not pass the initial health screening of the day, then we have to send them down to the clinic area, and every school is designating a different place, and that this person could help do that. There's no strings attached. A lot of the schools say they can do the health screenings before the children come on campus. They can help with that. So it was nice. It's not a whole lot of money, about $250,000, somewhere around there, but it's enough to get somebody in every school at least for the first semester. So that's good. So the big things this week, it was nice to get Neighborhood Medical on board with us on the rapid testing and to get the grant for the health monitors to help out with the schools as well. I need more good stuff like that coming.
And I'm sure my colleagues will be glad this is my last question. I asked it yesterday. How many Leon County School employees have contracted COVID so far?
So we have a list, and I'm not running around the question, but we have a list. It fills up a full page. But on that list, this is the running list that I keep. On this list are all the ones that have been exposed, and they're the ones that the Department of Health has reached out to. So there's probably about 50 names on that list, but I think the exposure is probably about half that many. And that includes students. So probably about 25 right around there. I didn't bring it with me during this. I'm not in my office right now, but it's about half that many that actually had tested positive, and that includes those athletes. We had some football players, had some volleyball players, so that's why the superintendent made the decision that, hey, at this point, let's just since we have some escalating numbers, let's go ahead and not do the workouts. Yeah.
Now, is that about 25 employees? Is that what you said have contracted COVID?
About 25 total on my list right now that count employees and a couple of high school athletes, handful of high school athletes. I would have brought the exact numbers, but like I said, I didn't bring it. Yeah.
Mr. Jones has been trying to get a question in.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. I wanted to be clear. Did you say that the district has a policy that requires all personnel at any of our facilities and in our vehicles to wear masks?
I'm sorry, we've had that, not in the vehicle. If they're in the vehicle by themselves, no, there's no requirement to wear a mask. If they're in their office by themselves, like I am right now, and you are at your home, no, there's no requirement to wear a mask. If there are other individuals where they cannot socially distance greater than 6 feet, yes, there is absolutely that requirement.
And this has been articulated to everyone.
We've been practicing it all summer. Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah. This was sent out in work plans, Mr. Jones, to all of our department heads.
All right. And I didn't know that it was all summer because for a long time, we waffled on the issue of whether or not masks were going to be required.
We were following the CDC guidelines when we were sent home, and when we brought back 12-month employees, we made it very clear that upon returning back to the work site, that if you were going to be in your own individual office, like I'm in my office now, I don't have to be masked. But if Attorney Williams came into my office to discuss or work with me, we both had to be masked. We also talked about if you were going into meetings, passing in the hallways. If you're in your work vehicles by yourself, no mask. But if you're working in a vehicle with other individuals, you had to be masked.
Those were the conditions set. Those were conditions set when they returned in June.
Yes. Yes.
Madam Chair, just for Yes, thank you. Dr. Cox, I did hear the answers to my questions. I was having a little bit of a computer problem, but I heard the answers and I appreciate that. And I am here with Ms. Coffey. She is wearing her mask out there somewhere. So for the safety, I just know that you probably noticed that, but I thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah. We've sent that out, and we've also sent out, Mr. Jones, we've sent out this new contact protocol, and I've done trainings with it, with the principals, and contact tracing protocol with the principals, and also with our, the maintenance and construction and facilities, painters, all those kind of folks. So, but it's a continual thing of reminder, right? It's a continual thing of just wear the mask, continually notes from my office, and we'll keep doing that.
Thank you.
All right, you ready to move on? Do y'all have any more questions for Dr. Cox?
I don't know if this is for him or for you. It's I wanted to clarify our intention with regard to the ventilation system. I know I've heard mixed reports and I've read various documents on what we could or should do with the air conditioning. I know there are a lot of teachers who've said to me, please at least make it colder in there. If we're going to have to wear masks, run the air conditioner longer, don't turn it off. Is there anything that we can do? I know other Johnson Controls has offered, I've seen several reports. Is there a plan for that?
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at increasing the filters, the quality of filters. But the problem is you have to filter, you can damage your equipment. But to your point, yes, we're going to reduce the set points. All the energy we saved in the spring, we'll get back. But yes, we're going to reduce set points and keep air on and keep air circulating as much as we possibly can and make it cooler in the rooms rather than warmer. If people need to wear sweaters, they'll wear sweaters. But to your point, anything we can do that's you have people coming out of the woodwork trying to sell every single thing known to man. UV lights going into air ducts. I mean, just all kinds of things. One, it's cost prohibitive. Two, the turnaround time, it would take us a year or more than a year to get all of it in place. But yes, to answer your point, we're doing everything we possibly can.
All right. Are you ready to move to a different segment, Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, ma'am. Jillian, why don't you, Ms. Gregory, you and Mr. Williamson give a brief update on where we are with devices, LMS, and content.
Sure. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, school board members. It's my pleasure just to give you a brief update this evening on where we are. For the good of the viewing audience, as you know, in our district under the Leon Forward Initiative, we are doing one-to-one. So our Chromebook devices are going to be, Mr. Williamson will be giving an update on that. And then there's 3 legs to the stool. The second leg has to do with the content, which is what like textbooks online. And then the third piece is really the learning management system. So let's begin with Mr. Williamson. If you want to talk about the devices, then we'll talk about Canvas, and then we'll go into the content.
Sure. Good afternoon, or evening, school board members. So as you're aware, about a month ago, we ordered 32,500 devices for Chromebooks for all students in K-12. Those devices are still en route. We expect that they'll be arriving in the Port of California towards the end of next week, and then expedited out to TIG. So hopefully delivery by August, sometime in early August, mid-August. And so we'll have those devices available to us at the start of school.
And then, do you want me to pause, and
Are you moving on, Jillian, to another topic?
I was going to talk about the LMS. So I didn't know if anybody wanted to ask questions specifically related to the devices.
I just want to make a comment because I've heard from a couple, maybe one person, a comment about, well, we spent this money on these devices and that makes all this technology equipment that we previously had obsolete. And I just want to remind anybody who may still be listening that going one-to-one, COVID is not the reason that we went one-to-one. COVID was the accelerator. for going one-to-one. We have been for years talking about needing to provide a device for every student. And the Leon County school system as a district cannot support every individual person with every different kind of laptop. We had to have a consistent application and device. And so I'm really proud of this. I know that we'll repurpose some of the other technology. I've spent quite a bit of time talking to Justin about this. And I just want to be clear that I don't believe we're being wasteful. I think we are being proactive. I think it's critically important that it's about time that we provide state-of-the-art devices for our kids. And this will be the thing that might save us from what would otherwise be the summer slide because we've got some ground to make up from since spring break and all through the summer. And this could be a big part of the solution. So I just appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. The staff has worked tirelessly to bring this contract into fruition, and I'm very proud of it. And I'm proud of our board for being willing, and our superintendent for his leadership for being willing to take this big step in the right direction. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate those comments, Madam Chair. And to add, I can promise you that we are repurposing a lot of these devices, these other devices, for our teachers and employees, because right now they have a bunch of technology that's outdated and could really use some of these other devices that we have in our inventory to give to our teachers, so they have the tools available to provide the quality of instruction that we are asking. So nothing's going to waste, I can assure you that.
And if I could add, Madam Chair, just on the note about the contract. So the contract has been executed, and so that will be coming back to the board at the next meeting for ratification. I know that was an agenda item that we had back in June.
Hello.
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Superintendent and Justin, I am interested in knowing there's got to be enormous staff considerations for the preparation and the distribution of 35,000 tablets across our district. And I know that I asked the question yesterday in agenda review that these tablets would come to us ready, but will they also, whatever protections that we also talked about at the time of the purchase, will they also already be installed? And I mean, 35,000 to distribute is a rather Herculean task. And I'm just wondering, is there going to be any implications in terms of additional staffing at the district level to be able to manage what is now this enormous responsibility?
Yes, Mr. Jones. So you'll recall a great part of this contract that we entered into was for white glove services from TIG. And so TIG is providing those services to us. And so they are a large company, and they have the capacity to prepare these devices. That includes, installing the cases, etching them, even the asset tagging and the management. All of that is happening. In terms of the configuration, that side there's a lot of work that has to be done, but it doesn't matter if we do it for one device or if we do it for 32,500 devices. That configuration gets pushed out to all of the devices as soon as they connect to the internet. And so that work is undergoing right now with our technology staff, and then also with part of our agreement with some of the additional support services that we received from CDW. So that work has already begun. And is taking place, even though we have not received possession of the devices yet. We're moving forward in that. I did have a call with TIG, and so they are working because we have expressed to them, certainly we have estimated timelines and arrivals from CDW, but there are many things that are outside of our control. There are many things in shipping and logistics that's outside of CDW's control. But we think that we're going to receive these devices on time. We believe that is still the case, and CDW believes that is still the case. But out of an abundance of caution and a great partnership with TIG, originally they were going to prepare all of these devices for us in their Atlanta facility. And they told us that it would take about 3 weeks for them to process those number of devices in their Atlanta facility. What they are going to do, the Atlanta facility is still their largest facility. They're going to process the bulk of those devices in Atlanta, but they have 2 facilities in the Panhandle They also have a facility in Orlando and a facility in Tampa. And so they're actually going to ship parts of our shipments to those facilities so that they actually have 5 facilities working on processing those devices at one time so that they can get them to us as quickly as possible because they understand the urgency in getting these devices into students' hands.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson.
Or Jillian? Sorry.
Yeah. So we've talked about this 3-legged stool. And so the first piece are Chromebooks and the devices. The second piece is learning management system and Canvas. So beginning June 12th, we really started rolling out professional learning micro PDs online through our Academic Services Weekly and our district webpage for professional learning. All around kind of the shift from face-to-face brick and mortar traditional instruction, of which many of our teachers are super comfortable, to kind of the pedagogical ideas that need to undergird distance learning. And then on July 1st, we pushed out Canvas as well as content that's digitized. To be really, I want to be super transparent. We are using content from primarily Florida Virtual School, but we're adding content every day from other sources. Georgia has tremendous resources that are online they're sharing with us for all different kinds of classes. And so that content's being added, and we're working through that. Just this week, we've been able to add some really exciting elective course offerings that are more academic in nature. So we're continuing to work through that. And then we are also working on making sure that our teachers have access to that content. So again, on July 1st, the Canvas trainings, Canvas 101, Quick Start Guide to Canvas launched, but also Florida Virtual School and some of these other trainings, some of these other courses with content were also launched. So, and that as a point of information, in the next week or so, we anticipate another upload from Florida Virtual School and from other sources, which will include not just the textbook online, but assignments and assessments aligned to that. So I'm super excited that in the next week, by the 3rd week of July, we'll be able to have pushed out as much content with assignments and assessments as possible. And that's going to be all through our learning management system with this, with the digitized instruction below it. One of the really important things that we need to take a moment and recognize is that we are taking our pacing guide, which is driven by the standard students are expected to know and do, and we have overlaid that with, for years, with our adapted instructional materials such as Wonders. But then we are also taking our digitized content and mapping that to those to that instructional focus calendar, so that the idea, with the vision that regardless of whether we're all in, we're all out, we're digital academy students, those students will be in pacing in a similar way. We don't require our teachers in traditional times, normal times, non-new normal times to do everything on the same day. But again, the idea being that we're going to have these, we've got these windows where people will be covering the same content, and that we're really hopeful that teachers are going to get super comfortable. It's a very quick, easy to learn process as it relates to both Chromebooks, the technology, opening it up, what support that needs, and Canvas, and then the content. And so I'm happy. We're kind of trucking along, and we are making our way and releasing updates and trainings. Our goal in academic services is to provide trainings 2 or 3 times, new content for trainings 2 or 3 times a week, which is done asynchronously at this time, but certainly we'll be moving to synchronous and asynchronous training models for our teachers as well.
Thank you, Ms. Gregory. Any questions?
Just had one question. We've talked about this before. The superintendent may want to answer it, and that is expectations around the Digital Academy in terms of work and time spent and that sort of thing, because we know it was pretty uneven in our crash course that we had in March, which was totally understandable. But could you just talk about that a little bit, about what parents can expect in terms of time, if they're in the Digital Home Academy, what they can expect in terms of time and expectations for in-person Zoom type lessons, those sort of things that I think people want to know.
Sure. Thank you, School Board Member Wood. So I'm really speaking really to students, right? So there's teacher time and teacher work expectations, and that's really outside the, you know, the scope of my work. That's really working with Miss McAllister and the union, and they're negotiating that. But really speaking specifically about students and students and their experiences with distance learning. To be very clear, and I'm so glad you asked this. One, the Digital Academy is not the same instructional model as the fourth 9 weeks of last school year at all. Two, grades that are earned in the Digital Academy are standing. Those are grades. We're not blending, modeling, doing anything. Those are grades the student is going to earn on assignments, and that's going to be posted. And it integrates with focus, and that's going to push out for the student's report card for the first 9 weeks or for the first semester. And then in terms of really getting down to the nitty-gritty for students, the thing about distance learning and online learning is that students can engage in it in an asynchronous at the same time as their teacher or an asynchronous way at different times with their teacher. So we're working through expectations around live instruction, new concepts being taught. Anytime new concepts are being taught, you know, the student should have the opportunity to engage with live instruction for that new content. Similarly, the student should be able to engage in live instruction in small groups. So if you have a student, for example, who's in tier 2 or tier 3 intervention, the technology exists that we can provide those interventional services in distance, right? If we can provide speech online, we can do interventions in and around reading and math online. And so we're working through those now. And then for students, it's, you know, you could, if the teacher is doing, and I'm making this up, if a teacher's saying every Monday I'm doing this math on Mondays at 9 a.m. and the student on one of those Mondays has a doctor's appointment, the student doesn't actually have to do the work at 9 a.m. if the teacher is recording there and pushing out that recorded stream of content. They could watch it separately, asynchronously, and do the work. So students should be expecting whole group and small group instruction, independent work practice time, but also, to be clear, our students who are ELL, who are, those are for English language learner students, those who are students who receive ESD services, we are working diligently to ensure that they get that same quality instruction that they get in the face-to-face in a distance environment.
Well, I guess, go ahead, Superintendent.
No, that was me. You can continue, Ms. Wood.
I just wanted to know, will the students see their fellow students? I mean, will there be opportunities like we're having? I mean, we're seeing each other, we're talking to each other. Will that be a part of the instructional model?
I think that without speaking to teacher working conditions, I think that it would be reasonable that if students are going into live instruction using Teams, so Teams has a smaller number of videos you get to see at a time, but certainly they will be in whole group instruction together. So I don't want to say that they may see, 32 other students, but they will see 4 other tiles while they're learning in whole group instruction or in small group instruction. So they will be able to see just as we do. We're using Zoom, and our preferred instructional tool is Teams, which is slightly different, but it's the same concept.
But will we not be allowed to use Zoom? I know a number of teachers use Zoom.
We are, Zoom integrates fully with Canvas, and we are working diligently on executing an enterprise-wide contract with Zoom, but we have not yet executed that contract, so I don't feel comfortable reporting that check mark. Teams we have right now, but we do understand that the features that are embedded in Zoom, which is the multi-tiles, you can see dozens of people, that is really preferred for our teachers. They like to be able to see their students. They like the eye contact, the facial expressions, the nonverbal cues. And we have provided feedback to Microsoft about the limitations of only 6-9 tiles in Teams. So, but I'm not yet to report that, yes, but Zoom integrates with Canvas, check, we verified that. And as we move forward with an enterprise contract, we will be reporting that back to you.
Thank you, Jillian. Mr. Jones, I was going to promote you to Dr. Jones. Were you trying to say something?
I am. Some degrees are earned and others are conferred. I wanted to ask the question. Thank you. I'm getting a frequent comment from parents in District 3. A great number of our parents, in large number, are opting for at-home options. One of the challenges that they're dealing with is with children from different schools, and as they have children across the age expanse, that they have children in high school, middle school, and elementary school, or any combination thereof, and that is an issue of bandwidth. And then being able to manage all of those devices on what formerly may have been at-home hotspots, or even that that what is provided here locally has not had the bandwidth to manage a number of children all having to be engaged simultaneously. And so I don't know if that has been taken into consideration in terms of scheduling and all the rest of that, in terms of what that engagement looks like. Certainly we cannot create a nuanced curriculum for every individual family, but that is going to be a challenge in terms of that type of engagement with families who have children of multiple ages attending multiple schools, all armed with our same device, and being able to have the type of access and connectivity where that we can ensure that learning occurs. It's something we must take under consideration and be prepared to respond to. Just want to share that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Jones. I've taken a note of that, and I will make certain to follow up with TIS and Mr. Nimmons on that point. Thank you.
Madam Chair, help me recall, we had buses in certain areas earlier this year. So those buses are now removed. We're not going to have them there any longer. That was just for the first 4 months when COVID hit us. Those hotspot buses, I call them, by whatever name they should be called.
We'll still be utilizing them, I believe, right, Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, ma'am. And wait till I talked about kids can work on homework assignments coming to and from school on those buses. You know, if need be, we can pull them back into different parts of the community. But I think, again, that there's very encouraging news that not nearly the numbers, although bandwidth may be an issue, to Jones's point, I'm very encouraged, though, that it's not 50% of our families don't have access or reliable internet. And that was the question. So I'm encouraged by that. There's not going to be a big N, but yeah, we'll have to again make accommodations for those to ensure that they have connectivity.
Okay.
May I also add, Mr. Superintendent, as I wear my Fort Brady frontiersman hat, first of all, let me acknowledge my principal, Mr. Jimbo Jackson, and I pray his continuing good health. But my families who are out Highway 20 are severely impacted by connectivity. So I hope that we're making provisions to make certain that they are. Smart buses have not had the bandwidth to be able to accommodate them, from what I've been told. So as we're talking about the onboarding of these devices, I want us to give consideration to our schools that are outliers, particularly outside of what we call the urban service area. I can imagine that would be Fort Brady, Shares, Woodville, and any other schools that are outside of that urban service area. I can imagine that may be a challenge felt by those schools as well. But I've been made aware of that challenge most specifically by my parents at Fort Brady.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. We had an IT meeting first thing this morning, and that was discussed areas outside of Comcast reach. And Mr. Nimmons, I think, has a good plan in place with T-Mobile and some other companies, and Mr. Figures and others to provide service for those companies, for those families. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then if I could just wrap up, and I just we offer something north of 600 courses in our district. And so we are working diligently to get content for most of our courses. But again, I want to over communicate and manage expectations that we are not going to be able to provide content for every course. So what we've developed is a prioritized list of professional learning with identified courses that we call gap courses. And we're working with we'll be working with our principals starting this week on that task, and our APCs next week, to ensure that we identify teachers during the master scheduling process, but not waiting until August, but getting that work started now so that they get the training they need to create create we've created the shell for them so they could upload the content for those courses. And, things like Avid, which are courses that are very important in some of our schools, they don't have online content that we can upload. So we need to work through with some of our schools that use Avid as an instructional strategy for their students and as a course. So we get that going. And so as an example. So I just wanted to be clear about that as well.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Strickland, and then I have a question too. Ms. Strickland?
Thank you. Jillian, I know the only thing I know we unveiled our plan prior to the governor's order, and the only thing I saw that was contradictory was that we for very just reasons wanted, once our parents chose digital, they could not waffle back and return in the middle of the semester to brick and mortar. However, the governor has made it very clear that they can. Or Commissioner Corcoran. So are we communicating that? Are we trying to gain a concession for that with DOE, or are we absorbing that message and conveying that to our parents, that if you do choose digital, yes, you may go back to brick and mortar, and the other way around?
No, that has not been our message at all. Our message has been, and I'm standing to it, and if someone wants to, I just don't. Our message has been, if you are choosing brick and mortar and you no longer feel safe in brick or mortar, that you can retreat to digital. The other way around, we have not made exceptions for and have not planned to make exceptions for because of the staffing implications and the social distancing and all the other things that come with it. Nor have we made exceptions for people who would like to take several classes through Digital Academy and several classes through brick and mortar. That's been our stance.
So to clarify, we're going to submit that in our plan to DOE that we are not going to allow people who choose digital to go back to brick and mortar during the semester.
Our plan will be what we're offering, the choices we offered families at the beginning of the year, what it looks like, both in brick and mortar face-to-face and the help me, Jillian, innovative learning options that we gave families for the first semester of the year. That's what we will be submitting. Yes.
Innovative learning environment.
So we're going to submit something contradictory to the governor's order on that one aspect.
To the commissioner's emergency order?
Yes.
I'm not prepared to answer that right now.
Okay, so let me just segue into my next question, which I was going to ask at the end of the time, was that are we going to be, I think we were expecting as a board a written proposal for a reopen plan that we would approve, then that would be submitted to Department of Education. So there's a plan due by the 31st, correct? Yes.
Yes,
okay.
But the plan for the 31st is not a reopen plan necessarily. It requires assurances that the delivery of instruction for students, and has those 5 components, ESC, it's really the subgroups for school accountability. So it's not necessarily a reopen plan. It's innovative. It's called an innovative learning environment.
Right.
And it has to do, right. So I just want to make sure.
Yeah, so most of us attend so much like you guys, we talked earlier, I think Dina assured she has an HR group. We know Kim has a finance group. Well, we have a school board association group, and most of us attend those calls on Friday. So we kind of get, interpretations of what's been issued. And so, we've listened to the assurances and the things that we're being asked to submit to the department, including the 5-day, option, which a lot of school districts were not on board with. They were going to do a 2-day and then a 3-day and kind of flip flop. And, we've been hearing some confirmation from the Department of Education that, we're not going to reject those plans, but we're going to try to move those districts toward compliance with what we're outlining. So I'm wondering if this one caveat, because from what I saw, we had all of our plan, everything we proposed and everything the reopen task force discussed and our kind of, our options moving forward, including Digital Academy, we were right in line with everything they were doing, except for that one caveat. And I'm just, if that plan, I would assume that needs to come to the board to be approved prior to be submitting to Department of Education. So I'm looking for a yes or no answer. Is that going to come to the board for approval prior to being submitted to Department of Education?
So I mean, I don't know that talking about the innovative learning plan, or we're talking about a parent that wants to bounce 1 week into Digital Academy and the next week to brick and mortar and the next week to Digital Academy and the next week to brick and mortar. Which plan are you talking about?
So I think the only thing that is contradictory in our plan would be that parents who choose brick and mortar, or parent other way, yeah. So our parents who choose digital cannot then opt to go back into brick and mortar. I think our digital
until the end of the semester, and I haven't heard. I don't know that this order speaks otherwise. To that, we gave parents options. We not unlike other districts that I'm in contact with, Bay County, Escambia County, and others that are doing exactly the same thing. Once this choice is made, and I think we're even they're holding the line on flip-flopping either way after they've made that commitment. And we are giving the flexibility and allowing for families whose conditions and health conditions may change and retreat home. Some of those other districts aren't even allowing that. Once you decide, they're holding them to that decision through the end of the first semester. I do not advocate that we get in the position of people bouncing back and forth from month to month or week to week, because they're really two different programs.
Okay, could I ask Opal for some clarification on that language? Because I may have misunderstood.
There is a provision in 1C of the Commissioner's emergency order. It's under the section called progress monitoring. And the second sentence of that section says, students who are receiving instruction through innovative teaching methods must be provided additional support and the opportunity to transition to another teaching method if they fail to make adequate progress. So there is one section in there that talks about giving those students, it's part of that progress, that robust progress monitoring that must be extended to all students in the same district. And then you got to be able to give students who don't seem to be doing as well based on what the progress monitoring shows, the ability to move to another teaching method. Now they say another teaching method here, but in the entire order, it talks about brick and mortar and then synchronous/asynchronous virtual instruction. So I think that maybe when Ms. Triplin is talking about what was discussed, and I certainly was not a part of that conversation, that's the one section of this entire order that I found that could in any way close to that. And it also, and we're all talking about the different groups that we all are members of. I'm also a member of our School Attorneys Association, statewide organization. And one of the, this concept is being discussed under the vein of the choice that has always been afforded parents, the ability to attend virtual, the ability to attend brick and mortar, and what strictures and restrictions are placed on that, understanding that we are in a very unprecedented time with staffing concerns and with budget concerns, but there is still this concern with all of that the department is still going to want to afford parents and those students the flexibility to utilize another method, and the other method would likely be brick and mortar.
If I may, when I read this, and I have it pulled up right now, when we talk about, they're talking about students who are in the multi-tiered system of support, MTSS, and when students are not making progress in MTSS and they're in tiered intervention, we don't take them from brick and mortar and put them in virtual school, right? We've had virtual school for 10 years. We actually change the teaching method. That's not the instructional delivery model, which is virtual brick and mortar. We change, we go from just to make it whole group to smaller group, or we go from smaller group to one-on-one. We go from Hardman to we go from corrective to Hardman to ABC Mouse, right? So those are teaching methods. When I read this, I did not see it as instructional. I did not see it as yes. And okay. so I think that what I heard from Chancellor Oliva was write up your plan. We want to work with you. And so that was kind of the vein we were going in. Like, we're going to be transparent and talk about everything that we're doing, and then let the department tell us if this is not acceptable.
And like I said, I think that's all completely on point. This was I believe this was at the press conference that they, you know, verbally translated some of the language. And I just remember that sticking out because I remember that was the only component that we may not have been in compliance to. So Opal, if you could just look into it, it sounds like we're not the only district, you know, needing some clarification on that. You know, and again, it was not from brick and mortar to digital. It was specifically, if you choose digital, coming back to brick and mortar within that time frame of the first semester. So if we could just get some clarification, and then to the second part of that, are we going to be given a written reopening plan prior to submission to Department of Education? A written assurance, whatever they're calling it, different than reopen.
So I had a conversation with Opal. Our goal is by the 28th to do a reopening plan, which by the 28th, we can roll that in and into part of it. And honestly, Ms. Strickland, I haven't had a lot of parents have said, if we don't feel good in the brick and mortar, can we go home? And we just said, yes, you know, making that accommodation. I don't really anticipate a lot of people that start in Digital Academy that in the middle of September are going to say, I want to run back into school. But I mean, look, it's 3.5 hours later. And so we want to be as accommodating as we can. That's the bottom line.
Well, you know, and again, no one can say enough kudos about what you guys have put into this process. And we keep saying things are changing. And there is just, I mean, within the last 2 hours, an article about a possible vaccine looking promising. So guys, there is, you know, things keep changing, and eventually there's going to be a day where they change for the better and not for the worse. So everybody hang in there.
But I think to your point and to our conversation with Opal, that we can bring that to you on the 28th, wrap it all in a nice package, including what we're going to submit to the department before the end of the month, and then have you all with an action item on it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Can I add one thing to Ms. Strickland's point? And I think it's a good one. And that is, I know traditionally we have parents that show up on the first day of school and say, let me enroll. You know, they've been around, but they just didn't bother, or, you know, I want to bring my child into kindergarten. And I just think we need to really think that through as to what the response is going to be. Or if they didn't answer this survey and the principals tried to reach out and they just said, I can't decide at a certain point, it seems like we're going to have to decide and say, well, this is, you know, you missed the deadline, or whatever we have to do to make it so that we don't keep adding kids into classes where principals have already planned for class size. That's what I'm concerned about.
Right, and you have kids that are going to move. They're going to move. Their families move. Someone the parent gets a job in the community. Kids are going to enroll all the time. So yeah,
that's different. That's different.
Right.
Can I interject here? I've been trying to for a minute. Two things. One, I appreciate Ms. Strickland's question, and what I want to make sure is that if you could please, Mr. Superintendent, Ms. Gregory, keep us updated so that we're not getting a last minute here, rubber stamp this, we're about to send it to the DOE. So if you could keep us in constant, you know, I know this is a moving target, so just, you know, with these weekly meetings, that might be easier for you just to give us an update so we know kind of where we're headed. And then my other question is part of the, I mean, the DOE is calling for parallel instruction between brick and mortar and online. So if you're a first grade teacher and you're using Wonders and in your classroom, in your brick and mortar classroom, but you're a first grader online, you're using Florida virtual school curriculum, which is not Wonders, is that right? Then why or how is that? And maybe that's why we want to discourage kids from jumping back and forth. Are we not able to put Wonders
on there?
Okay, so explain
so let's talk about it. Okay, so first off, students learn standards. We teach standards. How we teach standards is we use Wonders, we use Lexia, we use iReady, right? So we always teach standards. Then we use programs to support student learning those standards. So when we talk about the pacing guide, that standard is what we're going to work on. So we might be working on, a standard around with repeated readings, student will be able to read a passage independently. So whether we're working on that standard. Now, the teachers pick what we years ago picked Wonders as our ELA curriculum. So we still use it as our adopted instructional material. It's called Connect on Canvas. It'll be there, but it's called Connect Ed Online. So one of the pieces of feedback that we got through the different parent focus groups is that there's too many places to go, right? And so Connect Ed is there, but the issue with the Connect Ed curriculum is that it was never designed necessarily as a core instructional program, right? We have Wonders and they have their online component, but it's not a robust, rich online component intended to be the primary method by which delivery of instruction occurs. So with those shortcomings, we really felt like it was important for us to have one type of program that we could get to where everyone has a consistent educational experience. And so that is where we started the conversation around going out and finding other content. We've looked at lots of different providers and we landed on actually Florida Virtual School Content had the best feedback. And so we have used that and so it's online as well. If we all retreat home, everyone we're going to use FLVS content. But everyone's learning the same standard. And so in face-to-face instruction, our teachers are super comfortable with Wonders. They can use the Connect Ed features. The students in face-to-face are going to be using their Chrome, and particularly at the elementary level, their Chromebooks, right? K1, 2 they're not going back and forth, right? They're not going back and forth with Chromebooks. So they're going to be using the paper versions of Go Math and Wonders, those kinds of things that go home, because that's how they're delivering instruction. But all of the students are learning the same standards, right? And so
parents are listening. When you say standards, you mean all the students are learning 2 + 2 = 4.
Well, yeah, in the old math, yes. Yes. I had to say that. But yes. Yeah. So on Monday, August 1st, or whatever date it is, let's look. On Monday, August 31st, let's say the standard is for kindergarten MA 1, 2, 3, and that is 2 + 2 = 4. The students are all going to learn on August 31st, September 1st, depending on maybe the little some flexibility in the teacher classroom, right? Like we're not all automatons. Some classes go faster and some classes go slower, but they're essentially going to be learning 2 + 2 = 4. Now, how they're learning 2 + 2 = 4, that's the teachers instructing, and Wonders or Go Math is right behind them supporting them. And so the teacher is saying, we're going to learn 2 + 2, and Go Math says, you're going to learn 2 + 2 because you guys are going to take 4 M&Ms and you're going to separate them out, and that's going to be how we're going to do 2 + 2. But in Digital Academy, we really don't have M&Ms. So what you're going to do is you're going to move 2 pieces of wood and 2 pieces of wood together on the screen. So the idea is the standard is the standard. We're teaching the standards, but we're going to use the tools in face-to-face and brick and mortar. The Wonders are, in that example, the Go Math, and that's Think Central online. But in Digital Academy, we're going to use the FLVS content for that kindergarten example. With that being said, the Digital Academy kids, they're going to have resources available to them. Those teachers are going to have resources, but the intent is the standards are the same, and how we get there. And how we get there may vary.
Thank you. I just want to make sure if there were any parents still listening that they understood what we meant by standards.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Strickland.
We're going on toward 4 hours here. I'm wondering if we can possibly wrap up this portion and push anything that needs to be pushed, since we are meeting again next week. So we have a more often, thanks to Mr. Jones, we have a more often meeting time, but I think we're all beginning to drag, and this is important information. I think we need to be fully functioning. So would propose that we try to wrap up and maybe push what we need to push to next week.
I would concur, especially for the sake of our I think everybody's been working really long hours, including us, and we think better when we're more well nourished, hydrated, and not sleep deprived. Is there,
Madam Chair, I'd just like to say one thing. And because I know I asked a million questions, and I really appreciate the superintendent and his staff for answering those and all the work y'all are doing. And I just hope that, you know, some of us have different points of view on things, but in the end, we're all going to work together and make this work. And I just want to say that I have total confidence in you, Superintendent Hannah, and your staff. And, you know, we just come at things from different angles, but I think that's what makes us strong, is that we see things different ways. And I know in the heat of the moment, when we were having that discussion about letters, you volunteered to read for 2 hours, but I really think our audience can read. And that if we post those letters in a prominent place, you probably have better things to do. So I am just saying you're excused from that outburst if it unless you really want to do it, because people understand that, you know, we've had a 3.5-hour meeting without reading the letters. So you have a lot of things, important things to do, and they can read. That's my input.
Madam Chair.
John.
Based upon what I think next week's meeting will be extremely informative. The superintendent and his district team will now be informed about what parent choices are going to look like in terms of which will inform our staff choices. It will also inform transportation. And then the survey that the superintendent has done is doing with his principals relative to faculty will also inform our conversations next week. And as we listen to all of these voices who are talking to us from a variety of perspectives, both parents and staff and employees, as well as persons who've also been affected by COVID in our community, and as well as our teachers, I'm reminded as we come to making some final decisions, as Ms. Strickland describes, I'm oftentimes reminded that something I've said before, that it is not students, but it is teachers that make a facility a school. And I think what will be very critical for our decision-making moving forward will be the responses that the superintendent will bring back to us coming from his principals and our faculty's willingness to return to provide instruction in the district. And so that will be very, very key and critical to our conversations next week. And as our chairwoman has said, and Ms. Strickland has said, I look forward to what we are continuing conversation. And to everyone who's been involved thus far, our task force, who've done a fantastic job, our neighbors, and to all of this, the genius found in our superintendent and district leadership, thank you as well.
All right. Mr. Superintendent, does that wrap up your presentation for tonight?
It does, and I appreciate you trying to let me off the hook, Ms. Wood. But at 11 o'clock tomorrow, during my lunchtime, and I'm committed to do it. But I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys. I know sometimes, look, I'm human. What you see is what you get, right? I'm not the polished politician. I'm just not that guy. But I agree with you, Roseanne. I mean, we're gonna get it. We're gonna get it right. And sometimes I might not want it coming from all sides, but that's what I need, and that's what that's what the teachers deserve, and our children deserve, and our constituents deserve, and I'm proud to work alongside of you guys. So anyway, next week we'll hit it again and see where we are, and if we need to adjust, we'll adjust, and by the August the 19th or whenever, we'll get it right.
All right. I usually say it for her, but tonight, Ms. Bowen says,
I move we adjourn. All minds clear?
Clear.
Yes.
All minds are really foggy. It's late, and we're Good night, everybody. Thank you to all the staff who hung in there with us. I'm sorry we kept you here so late.
Yes. Thank you all. Good night. Oh.